What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. Slept 100 years in Pirate 1 High Chapter 1. I return from my deep sleep. Grand Line, in an ancient castle on an island. Boss, this board is too strong and cannot be opened at all. The pirates were surrounding the coffin in the center of the hall, looking exhausted. They had been prying with various tools for an hour, but there was no movement on the coffin, which seemed to be firmly integrated with the ground. No matter what, we must open this coffin for Lousy. There must be something inside. The pirate leader said solemnly. Others may not know it, but he knows the true value contained in the coffin in front of him. The material is as hard as iron, the unique wood grain and the unforgettable touch. These are the qualities that only Baoshu Adam possesses. Almost all pirates with some experience at sea know how rare Treasure Tree Adam is. Only ships built using it as a keel could successfully traverse the entire Grand Line. However, such a rare thing was used to make a coffin, just like using a lot of gold to make a toilet, which is incredible. No, more accurately, even the Treasure Tree Atom can only be used as an outer board, so there is a high probability that the treasure box disguised as a coffin is a peerless treasure. The pirate leader glanced at the treasure boxes stacked haphazardly in the hull, with a greedy look in his eyes, and then turned his attention back to the coffin in the center, thinking. Although I lost a lot of people to get here, this sacrifice is nothing compared to the blood-cursed treasure. As long as I bring this treasure back, I can immediately form a large team of pirates. Group. I don't know how long it took to pry, but the coffin finally made a dull sound, and a gap was exposed in the solid cover. Did you make it? Hi, open it. The pirates made excited sounds and slowly pushed open the cover from the side. As the faint light gradually dissipated the darkness of the coffin, a rotten smell also hit the nostrils, making people shudder. But the pirates did not retreat. Instead, they endured the nausea and cast their eyes full of curiosity into the coffin. Lying in the coffin was a young-looking man. His handsome face was slightly pale, and he had his hands clasped on his chest. He seemed to have stopped breathing long ago, but his face was unexpectedly calm, as if he was peaceful in a deep sleep. He wore a cloak of thick fabric, woven from glossy black silk, with a smooth and shiny surface that exuded a deep luster. The dark red shirt underneath is softer and seems to be made of light cotton fabric. It looks more noble and mysterious against the black cloak. Under the clothes, his body proportions are just right, and every muscle is firm and powerful, but not too abrupt, as if the master of painting created it after countless deductions. For a moment, the hall fell into silence. The pirates stared closely at the man in the coffin, breathing softly as if to welcome the man's awakening. Time passed slowly, and every second felt extremely long. However, the man never woke up. When the tension and uneasiness gradually subsided, the pirates realized how absurd the idea in their minds was. In this silence, a pirate finally murmured dissatisfiedly. What? It turns out it's just a coffin to hold a corpse. I thought it would be the same as the captain said. What kind of treasure is there? We went to such great lengths just to pry open a coffin. It was like something only idiots would do. The other pirate responded mockingly. Okay, stop mumbling to Lousy. Disappointment flashed in the pirate leader's eyes, but he still kept a straight face and maintained the dignity of the captain. You arrogant bastards, get to work for Lousy. Evacuate all the treasures in this castle for me. When the rest of the pirates dispersed, the pirate leader was still staring at the man in the coffin. He slowly bent down and took out a ring from the man's finger. After weighing it, he turned and left, muttering. Advertisement, I didn't expect that I would make a mistake. However, after just 2 steps, he felt an inexplicable creepy feeling in his heart. Suddenly, a faint voice came from behind quietly. Junior, are you the one who disturbed my clear dream? The moment he heard the sound, the hair on his body stood up. He turned around in a panic and pulled out his sword. He saw a figure appearing above the empty coffin, looking directly at him. Isn't this figure the man lying in the coffin just now? Why did this corpse actually come back to life? What exactly is going on? He couldn't help but breathe quickly. Suddenly, a cold air came from the soles of his feet to Tinling Guy, and there was cold sweat on his forehead. What? Are you? The pirate leader gritted his teeth with an expression of anger. The other pirates also turned their heads at this moment, and then there was a look of fear on their faces. The man did not answer, but slightly narrowed his blood-red pupils, scanned the crowd and asked, how many years is Sea Circle calendar now? As he finished speaking, a strange and suffocating atmosphere gradually enveloped the entire castle. At first, no one answered. It wasn't until a wet-haired pirate couldn't stand the depressing atmosphere that he shouted with some mental breakdown. It's Sea Circle calendar 1520. 1520? As the man murmured thoughtfully, the depressing atmosphere around him disappeared. Then the corners of his mouth rose, and the facial muscles that had not moved for a long time gradually revealed an expression called, smile. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Joel. I am the owner of this castle. I have been sleeping here for 100 years. Of course, if you can't understand this kind of thing, then you can think of me as a god. Sleeping for 100 years? God. The pirates had strange expressions on their faces. Even though they were still in a state of panic just now, they seemed to be stimulated by the big joke. After being silent for a few seconds, they burst into joyful laughter. Gods? Lousy is a pirate, he doesn't believe in the existence of any gods? Are you kidding? Even in the legend of the blood-cursed treasure, there are only demons filled with resentment after being cursed. How can there be any gods? Etc. As if they realized something, the pirates' laughter stopped abruptly. They watched Joel hold his breath again, and the fear climbed into their hearts like tentacles. If it is a demon disguised as a god, then it makes sense, so he is. Cursed demon. Whether it's a god or a demon, it doesn't matter. Joel looked at everyone calmly. The important thing is that I made a promise to myself. If someone can wake me up in the future, I will give him a special gift. Although they were extremely frightened, the pirates had gone through a lot of hardships to get here. How could they give up the gold and silver they dreamed of just because of mythical legends? As a result, they let out loud shouts and tried to increase their momentum. A gift? Is there any better gift than this room full of treasures? Lousy doesn't need any gifts, just grab whatever you want. Joel turned a deaf ear to the roars of the pirates and just walked slowly towards the throne in the center of the hall. He didn't know when he had a spiral-patterned fruit in his hand. There is a secret treasure in this world called devil fruit. If you eat this fruit, you can gain power as strong as the devil. The one I have is Logia devil fruit, which is recognized as the strongest among the 3 categories of devil fruit. And this is the gift I want to give you. Advertisement. After a few seconds of silence, the hall erupted into bursts of shocked shouts. Devil fruit? Hey, is that really devil fruit? It's unmistakable. Only the legendary devil fruit can have such a unique spiral pattern. If you can eat it, you will definitely be able to conquer this sea. The pirates stared at the fruit that Joel was playing with and kept swallowing. Desire has filled their hearts. So, what's the price? One of the pirates yelled. Of course there is no need to pay, this is the reward you deserve. Joel gently fluffed up his cloak, elegantly sat on the throne behind him, threw the fruit in his hand, and let it roll around on the ground for a few times before showing a rather teasing smile. However, this is the only power that can overpower countless people after eating it. Have you thought about how to distribute it? Only this power. Above countless people. The low narration was like the whisper of an ancient demon in the ear. In just a few breaths, the pirates looked at each other with hostility and even murderous intent. Of course this is a power that only captains are eligible to obtain. With this power, Lousy can build and command a huge pirate fleet and become the pirate governor, ha ha ha. The pirate captain walked straight towards the devil fruit that fell on the ground and said greedily and enthusiastically. He was about to lean over to get the devil fruit when he was suddenly stabbed from behind with a long knife. Suddenly, bright red blood flowed out along the sharp blade. He looked at the knife thrust out of his chest in shock, then turned his head and looked behind him with all his strength. I'm sorry, Captain, although I have always regarded you as my favorite father. But compared to this power that can conquer the sea, father can be abandoned at any time. A burly pirate put his right foot on the pirate leader's back, kicked him hard, pulled out the bloody sword, and let the opponent's body collapse limply. Then he picked up the fruit, held it up high, and laughed crazily. Now, this devil fruit is mine. Who will give it to you? Before the pirate could warm up the devil fruit in his hand, his raised arm was cut off by a sudden sharp axe. With a scream, his arm fell to the ground along with the fruit. Why can't I get this power? Lousy doesn't want to be subordinate to others all his life. No one can stop me. The companions who were still holding hands the day before were now completely dominated by desire and began to fight for each other. They waved their swords desperately and attacked each other in confusion, making heart-rending roars. Bodies and blood filled the entire castle, creating a gruesome and horrific scene. But soon, everything returned to calm, and the intact devil fruit was still lying on the ground. Although many twisted hands are stretched towards it, it remains untouchable. Greed has taken away all life. Among the mess on the ground, only one wet-haired pirate who had always been hiding in the corner survived. Looking at everything happening in front of him, he once again recalled the legend of the blood-cursed treasure. Anyone who enters the blood-cursed island will inevitably be killed. Once the ancient tomb is opened, the ancient evil spirit sealed by the sacred will break through the curse and return to the world. He will kill all intruders and take their internal organs and blood. With this, resurrection completed. Chapter 2. The villain's name is Caribou. Joel sat lazily on the throne, resting his head on his right hand. Although he was the instigator, he was not interested in the fight in front of him at all. Until the end, he still closed his eyes comfortably. After more than 100 years of slumber, he had forgotten too many things, and now he had to recall the past a little. Joel vaguely remembered that he traveled to the pirate world about 130 years ago, and ate the devil fruit, a species of phantom beast, and became a user with bat fruit and vampire form abilities. This devil fruit, which was originally going to be obtained by the lonely red, Valoric Redfield, fell into his hands ahead of time. As a result, he remained young and gained unlimited life. Even though more than 100 years have passed, he still hasn't left any traces on his body. No matter what era we are in, human beings cannot escape the shackles of desire. Finally, Joel slowly opened his eyes and stepped off the throne. He has witnessed people killing each other for greed many times, but this time it did not end with the entire army being annihilated. Some people survived. The wet-haired pirate shivered and clasped his hands in his white clothes on his chest, half tilting his head as if he was reciting a prayer to seal away evil spirits. When he saw Joel walking towards him, he was repeating the prayer and complaining with tears in his eyes. "Father, I have a 78-year-old grandmother and a 26-year-old idiot brother. How can you bear to bring such a pious me to you now? Please let me do more evil in this world." "Don't worry, I will keep my promise." Joel flicked his sleeves and interrupted the other party's grandiose behavior. "Now, that devil fruit is yours." The wet-haired pirate stopped praying and observed Joel with bated breath. Seeing that the latter had no intention of taking action, he made up his mind and quickly rushed towards the devil fruit on his hands and knees. Without hesitation, he bit off a piece of pulp and swallowed it. As the disgusting smell spread, a strange power gradually filled his body. "Father, you really didn't abandon me." When surprise appeared on his face, Joel's casual voice also came. "Pirate, you can tell yourself your name now." The villain's name is Caribou." After hesitating for a few seconds, Caribou said his name respectfully. For this name that seemed familiar but had no impression, Joel just glanced at the other person. "Then, try to use your ability." "Advertisement, yes, the villain knows. I understand." Caribou tried to use the magical power surging from his body, and it was as if his body melted. Puddles of mud dripped from his body, turning the surrounding ground into a swamp like an ocean. Is this the power of devil fruit? It's incredible. Surprised, Caribou's eyes widened with joy. Joel tilted his head slightly and said, "That's right, Carib, use the swamp to clean up the room. I don't like the place where I live to be so messed up." "Clean up? The villain knows." Caribou was slightly confused, but quickly reacted and gradually released the power of the swamp. It was like an endless quagmire connected to another space, collecting all the mess on the ground. When he took back the quagmire, all the corpses and weapons on the ground disappeared. Hee. This is so delightful. Caribou's little confidence began to expand infinitely, and his slender tongue that could almost reach his forehead couldn't help but stick out from his mouth, trembling with his smile. He secretly looked at Joel and showed a dark smile. "What, this guy is too stupid, he actually gave me such a powerful power. Even if this guy is a demon or something, he will never pose any threat to me now. No, I underestimate myself. The devil will only surrender at my feet." But this thought only flashed through his mind, and soon Caribou's face became as ugly as constipation. The body that had turned into a swamp sprayed out a ring uncontrollably. Lord Joel, what is this?" In an instant, Caribou returned to his cautious expression and looked at Joel nervously. Joel picked up the ring that had fallen on his heel, adjusted his cuffs, and then said, "A sea stone used to suppress blood activity in my body." As he spoke, he glanced at Caribou and said intentionally or unintentionally, "Of course, it can also seal the power of other demon fruit powers." Seal. Caribou's heart beat faster after catching the key word. He hurriedly lowered his head and asked in a slightly trembling voice, "Master Joel, what about you too?" "Advertisement, that's right, a demon fruit power." Joel put away the sea stone ring and spoke casually as if chatting about everyday things. "It's actually demon fruit power. Is he also the creator of the blood curse treasure? What is going on with this man?" Caribou was distraught. But Joel didn't care what Caribou thought. He just looked around the castle and said, "Caribou, use the swamp to remove all the treasures here." The main reason why he left marsh fruit here in the first place was just to facilitate the transportation of these treasures. In the world of pirates, wealth is indispensable and hard currency that countless people compete for, and this will never change at any time. By the way, these treasures. After being reminded by Joel, Caribou immediately stopped worrying and looked energetically at the bright and luminous objects placed in the treasure boxes. Even the amount of wealth represented by just one box of gold and silver treasures in the hall is already several times greater than the grand goal he set before going to sea, not to mention that there are dozens of such treasure boxes in the hall. If all these treasures were mine. Caribou's eyes were eager, and he resisted the idea of taking these treasures as his own. Following Joel's command, he poured out of the swamp like a wind in the remaining clouds, emptied all the treasures in the castle, and stored them in his own swamp space. Middle. When the work was completed, he ran back to Joel with a flattering expression. "Master Joel, look at how well this little guy did." However, the cunning look in his eyes from time to time revealed his inner calculations and thoughts. However, Joel doesn't care what Carib thinks. To him, it doesn't matter. He just gently raised the black cloak behind him, walked towards the castle gate to the outside world, and murmured calmly, "It's time to return to this world again." Beams of bright sunshine shine through the castle gate, like paving a white avenue leading to light in the gloomy darkness. As the last footprints walked out onto the white avenue, this ancient castle once again fell into the eternal tranquility. It has calmly watched the changes in the world through countless ups and downs. And now, the intertwined threads of fate have finally begun to weave from here. And, Guide to the Future. Chapter 3 Sneak Attack the Blood Curse Island. This is the name given to it by the world. The island is covered with huge blood-red plants, their roots sprouting savagely from the ground and covering the surface of the entire island. Like a closed cage, this island refuses any human to set foot on, but any intruder will be crazily attacked and even killed by countless blood-red plants on the island, becoming its nourishment. Occasionally, a few intruders manage to escape from the island. Not only did they swear never to return to this ghost place, but they also spread the various horrific experiences on the island to the world with lingering fear. When the sea story, which is both true and false, has gone through countless versions and been circulated for hundreds of years, it has become an ancient and mysterious legend. On the island at this time, Caribou used the power of the mire to continuously destroy the blood-red plants that were attacking from around him. He opened his hands upward, and the brown mire spurted out from the white gown swallowed up the huge piranha with its bloody mouth. As a newcomer who has just joined the pirate group for less than a month, he had witnessed with his own eyes how the senior pirates who were many times more ferocious than him struggled to resist the crazy attacks of these plants. It was also the deep realization of how many pirates had died along the way that made them set foot in the center of the island. However, once you have the devil fruit ability, such a terrifying dilemma becomes trivial. This is the power that I, Caribou, have now? It's so refreshing. With this power, who can stop me? Maybe I can become a Shichibukai, or become the Emperor of the Sea. No. Not only that, even the great secret treasure left by One Piece will eventually be obtained by me. Hey hey hey. Thinking of this, Caribou chuckled happily, and at the same time, he cast his cunning eyes at Joel, who seemed to be defenseless behind him. Joel walked leisurely while looking around at the surrounding scenery. The plants on the island that had absorbed his blood had been eroded for hundreds of years, and their original fervent vitality had become ineffective and declined. Just as he expected, the plants surrounding the island would reveal gaps over time, and external disturbances would wake him up from his sleep of more than 100 years. This can be regarded as an alternative biological clock. However, the time of waking up now is still far different from what he expected at the time. Without witnessing the maritime disputes in the Rocks era and later Roger and others, this time travel is still a little less fun. Just as Joel was slightly lost in thought, a huge amount of swamp suddenly came over, like a tsunami, and instantly submerged his figure in it. Huh. Caribou, who succeeded in the sneak attack, stared at the swamp in front of him. After gradually becoming able to skillfully use the ability of this swamp, he is now very confident in his own power. Advertisement, however, at this moment, he still looked like a child who was afraid of being discovered when he did something bad, panting nervously. However, when he thought about being able to swallow up all the treasures and achieve great achievements, the uneasiness and tension on his face relaxed a lot, and he kept murmuring as if to cheer himself up. No problem, it's just a simple killing. Caribou, now you have taken the most critical step to become a real pirate. Soon you will reach the top of the world as a king. When you become prosperous in the future, bring that stinky old woman and that idiot Caribou with you, so that they can also take advantage of Lord Caribou. The more he spoke, the more excited he became, and the new and glorious future seemed to be reflected in his pupils. Yes, very thoughtful. After all, it is Logia's devil fruit. If used properly, it is not impossible to become the world's top powerhouse. Almost following Caribou's words, a voice with an affirmative tone came from behind him in a serious tone. Ahem, hey, right. The priest has predicted my future. I, Caribou, will definitely be able to do great things. After receiving the words of approval, Caribou couldn't help laughing, but soon, the laughter stopped abruptly. No. If that guy is trapped in the quagmire by me, then who is talking to me now? Is there anyone else on the island? Without even thinking about it, a hand as thick as a mountain had already climbed onto his shoulder. However, I forgot to tell you one thing. The last person with marsh fruit ability who falsely claimed to rule the world died in my hands. The calm voice behind him sounded again, but the low tone made Caribou feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. Hey, no, it's not. Before he could even say a complete apology, a whisper came from behind him again. Have you ever experienced the feeling of not having any oxygen in your blood? Oxygen blast? With a strange vibration coming from his blood, Caribou's complexion suddenly became extremely pale and distorted. In an instant, a huge burst of air surged out from the pores on his body in all directions, and his body went limp like a deflated balloon. The fear like drowning couldn't help but invade his brain. He wanted to struggle desperately, but he couldn't use any strength or make a sound. In the end, he could only fall deeper and deeper into the sea in endless pain. Just when he was about to finish watching the first half of his life in his mind, he seemed to see two figures in the dark that kept encouraging him. As if a force had been injected into his body, Caribou raised his upper body desperately, supporting the ground in a half-kneeling position, panting violently and retching. Alive. Advertisement. Even though the strong feeling of fainting in his mind and the tightness in his chest were not relieved, the feeling of coming back to life after wandering around the edge of death made him unable to help but scream. Huh? Really? The response came with something that seemed to be confused. I didn't really come back to life. Yes, I'm sorry, Lord Joel. Caribou suddenly remembered that the man he wanted to challenge was still standing beside him, as if he was ready to deliver the final judgment at any time. He cried bitterly and raised his eyes, like a humble tick, weak and helpless, begging for mercy. If it is a loving priest, no matter how serious the sin he commits, he will be forgiven. But if it is a devil, how will he be punished? He got the answer, a thick flying kick. I don't like a man looking at me like that. Joel retracted his foot with slight disgust, and then slowly said, Don't worry, I have temporarily lost interest in killing people, so you can still provoke me. You were clearly trying to kill me just now. I'm almost going to see the priest. Caribou couldn't help complaining in his heart, but without slowing down at all, he crawled from a distance to Joel's feet and said with a panicked expression. Lord Joel. It was the villain who was blind and rushed into you. It was the villain's mistake. The villain will never dare to do it again. No, I suddenly remembered. Joel looked at Caribou at his feet, and a dangerous smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. If you don't do anything, life at sea can sometimes be boring, and the occasional collision is also a good leisure activity. Relax, leisure activities. Caribou's eyes widened and he stammered as he repeated, feeling his chest became even more stuffy for a moment, but don't worry, I won't be ignorant of the importance of my actions. Joel waved his hand indifferently, but then he thought of something, and his eyes gradually fell into a shadow. Or, you can't even satisfy me with this small amount of fun? How come? Caribou swallowed nervously and tried hard to squeeze out what he thought was a bright smile from his tear-stained face. The villain will never let down the high expectations of the adults. Chapter 4 Crocodile Arrest News. Returning from the original route to the shelter on the coast, Caribou walked on the now empty pirate ship with a familiar path. After having a clear understanding of his situation, he learned from the pain and decided to temporarily rest on his laurels, and began to actively carry out the hard work of hauling in anchors and raising sails. When the pirate ship gradually set sail and left, Joel looked at the island and then slowly said, Caribou, do you know why the plants on this land are so lush? I guess it's because, sir, what have you done? After all, that is your residence. Caribou answered cautiously. Joel's eyes were deep. No, it was because countless rotting corpses turned into sufficient nutrients, which allowed extremely lush plants to breed. Once upon a time, this was an extremely prosperous country. So, the fertilizer on the land is full of corpses. Caribou couldn't help but feel a little numb when he thought that he had just set foot on such a terrifying island, but at this moment, facing Joel's words, he had to respond. Was it your power, my lord, that destroyed this country? If I did it, there would be no need to mention it. Joel's gaze became deeper and deeper, and he seemed to be murmuring vaguely in memories, but that was indeed the beginning of a huge war. A huge war. Caribou swallowed and pricked up his ears to listen, but after waiting for a long time, Joel continued to speak, so he had to stand aside and wait curiously and helplessly. Sure enough, those things were lost in the long river of history. Joel glanced sideways at Caribou's expression, but was not surprised. The hegemony on this sea is not always stable. 800 years ago, 400 years ago, 100 years ago, or several decades ago. Every era will always breed unstable factors, but only the winner can leave his name in the history books, while the loser can only leave sadly without leaving a trace. Records related to the past war have probably been erased. Let's go, get out of here. Joel came back to his senses, and his eyes became unfocused again. Lord Joel, where are we going next? Carib asked. Go toward the middle. Middle? Yes, in the middle. Okay, I understand. Who would understand where the middle is in Grand Line? Caribou complained in his mind that he was not a navigator, not even a competent sailor. However, this gentleman is not an easy guy to get along with at first glance. If he asks more questions, he may make the other party unhappy. So, under the helm of Caribou, the pirate ship named Gulu began to sail on the sea for several days. Although no island was found, fortunately there was plenty of food and water on board, so there was no need to worry. But Caribou is not worried about the other major threat that pirates always talk about, the sea monsters and sea kings. Because that adult will take action. Wow, advertisement. A few seconds after the sea beast leapt from the sea, causing huge waves like a rain curtain, its body was brought to the deck. A tall figure strolled out of the mist caused by the sun's rays on the seawater. The sea beast with a rabbit head and a fish body was lightly thrown, and the deck began to sway uncontrollably from side to side. Eat rabbit head tonight. Joel shook off the water stains on his cloak, sat on the seat under the sun umbrella, and began to close his eyes and meditate. It's so powerful. No matter how many times he watched it, Caribou could not help but sigh secretly. If only he, Caribou, had this power, it's already taken off. But speaking of it, what kind of devil fruit ability does this adult have? While he was thinking, he dragged the sea beast's body on the deck with both hands and walked towards the storage room. At this time, a newsbird landed on the eaves of the cabin, lowered its head and looked at him calmly, as if asking if he wanted a newspaper. Have some. Caribou took out 50 belly from his arms with great pain. The newsbird shook its head dully and raised its wings to 1. When did the price increase again? Caribou complained dissatisfiedly that although he did carry a huge amount of wealth, it did not mean that this wealth had anything to do with him. Without Joel's consent, he didn't dare to touch the money, even 1 penny. As for the savings he has actually accumulated, there is not much at all. It can even be said that there is none. Seeing the newsbird's wings holding the 1 motionless in the sea breeze, Caribou gritted his teeth and took out another 50 belly change. After all, newspapers, as the only information carrier on the sea, are a necessity that all sailors cannot ignore. Newsbird took the 2 coins handed over by Caribou with a look of human disdain on his face, dropped a newspaper, and walked away. What kind of attitude do you have? You actually dare to look down on your Uncle Caribou, who is just a newsbird, damn it. When I get rich, I will buy all the World Economic News and put all you stinky birds on the grill. Caribou clutched the newspaper and cursed angrily at the black spots in the sky. When I think that I clearly have a treasure in the sky, but I can't use it, I can't help but feel a little depressed. After he managed to adjust his mentality, he opened the newspaper, put aside the bounty lists inside, and browsed the contents. This is, Caribou's eyes widened with surprise in his pupils. This is big news that shocked the world. Moreover, this news seems to take place in the sea area. After hesitating for a moment, Caribou quickly walked to Joel, handed over the newspaper, swallowed and said, "Master Joel, there's big news." Joel took the newspaper and looked at the bold title. The original 7 warlords of the sea crocodiles conspiracy to destroy Alabasta was announced, and Marine Colonel Smoker was arrested for meritorious service. Next to the vertical title is the detailed content that takes up a whole page. Advertisement first. Relevant insiders describe Crocodile's layout over the years from a first-person perspective. Next is the current situation of Crocodile's arrest, and finally Marine's description of the hero Smoker's commendation. It is well illustrated and detailed. It seems that I had a really long sleep this time. Joel murmured thoughtfully. Without the interference of other factors, Crocodile's defeat by the Straw Hat crew has long been a given in the original work and is not worth mentioning. However, what makes Joel think about is his absolute control over Devil Fruit's abilities. Most of the demon beast species will basically gain multiple special powers while their physical strength is strengthened. Take the strongest creature Kaido as an example. He can control clouds, wind, fire and thunder. As a phantom beast in the form of a bat, Joel has the power to control blood and darkness. However, unlike Kaido, who cultivates and uses his ability evenly, Joel has always been studying the ability to control blood. Just as Devil Fruit is the possibility of human evolution that humans pursue. And eternal youth and immortality are mankind's wishes for Devil Fruit. This kind of prayer for the future from people in the past, as well as Joel's meticulous control of blood, enabled him to surpass his predecessors, cross the long river of time, and reach the current era. However, even if he has accomplished something that no one before him could do, Joel clearly understands that the current time deviates greatly from expectations. His control over Devil Fruit's abilities is far from reaching its limits. It seemed like I could only do this in the past. Joel shook his head slightly, but quickly accepted the status quo, and continued to absent-mindedly flip through several freshly released bounty lists for the Straw Hat Pirates in the newspaper. Caribou, who was standing aside, carefully observed Joel, and saw that the latter's expression did not change much at all, and he became increasingly depressed. Those are the 7 warlords of the sea, big pirates recognized even by the world government. Why wasn't he surprised by the downfall of the 7 warlords of the sea? Quote. Carib never gave up on the idea of getting rid of Joel and taking a fortune with him. Therefore, he must find out the details of the other party. Using such explosive news to test the opponent's attitude as a combat method. However, it seems to have failed. Yes, I understand. An idea flashed in Caribou's mind, and he suddenly understood the problem. Joel was not surprised, just because he was a person from 100 years ago, and the establishment of 7 warlords of the sea was only a dozen years at most, so. He doesn't understand the value of 7 warlords of the sea at all. Thinking of this, Caribou felt much better. He still had a great chance. At that time, he will establish his own business, establish a large fleet, and serve as the pirate governor, becoming an immortal legend passed down by pirates. Maybe it can all happen. However, the first thing to do is to make Joel relax on himself, and then find a way to get rid of him completely. So now, Caribou's eyes gradually filled with light again, and he continued to work hard at his life of hard labor. Chapter 5 Nico Robin. On the calm sea, the deck of the pirate ship was not peaceful. Caribou tried his best to avoid a huge bloody fire, and couldn't help but slump down on the deck, with tears in his eyes. Master Joel, I have been peaceful and well behaved these past few days, and I haven't done anything bad. I haven't moved for a long time, so I accidentally got a little too strong. Joel pinched out the blood inflammation released in his palm with some embarrassment. This is not too strong, it can almost kill me. Caribou sniffed with fear, feeling that the blood in his body was still boiling. The leisurely voyage of the past few days made Joel feel a little itchy. In addition to eating and resting, he also had to move his muscles every day. Caribou's life is a little richer. In addition to working as a cleaner, lookout, sailor, and helmsman, he also has to receive training from Joel. But he benefited greatly from these trainings, and of course, he was able to get a full 4 hours of rest during the day, which also made him look forward to the dawn of the next day with hope. However, similar emergencies always made him feel like he was wandering between life and death. This adult is really terrifying. It's foggy, so that's the end of today's training. Joel looked ahead where the fog was getting thicker and walked into the cabin. Although he is a bat species with demon fruit power, he still prefers bathing in the sun than the wet and sticky feeling in foggy weather. However, being too addicted to sunlight will degrade all aspects of his body's functions. Of course, a sun-loving vampire doesn't care. It's getting foggy. Unlike Joel's attitude, Caribou became a little excited. Isn't this kind of weather an opportunity given to him by the loving priest? As long as he put down a small boat and secretly left the pirate ship while the fog was heavy, he would be free to fly. However, what should I do if I get lost in this sea fog? And every time I wanted to move secretly before, I always felt a little cold on the back of my head, as if I was being stared at by something. Caribou hesitated for a long time, but finally gave up the idea of escape. But when the ship passed through the sea fog and the surrounding sight suddenly became clear again, Caribou began to regret that he had not made up his mind just now. Finally, he sighed and went back to cleaning the deck. The pirate ship sailed for another 2 days and finally arrived at an island. The beach is covered with sunshade thatched roof huts, and it is quite lively with people coming and going. In a tavern on the beach, Caribou shouted in surprise. What? This is Aska Island. Hey, guest, you are too excited. Advertisement. The boss put on a wrinkled smile and said, she's just like the pirate lady who came not long ago. You must have heard about the legend of the 7-star sword and came all the way, right? 7-star sword. Joel seemed to have thought of something, and that time stopped in the memory of the past, vaguely and intermittently connected. Lord Joel, the 7-star sword is known as the most beautiful legendary sword in the Grand Line. Legend has it that this super treasure is located on Arca's Island. The reason why Caribou became a pirate from a civilian was not only because he wanted to escape from the island, but also partly because he had researched the legends and stories in the nearby waters. Those oral legends may have the aura of demons, or they may appear as gods in the books he has read since childhood. Young man, it's no problem. Maybe you also have a chance to find the treasure. The tavern owner laughed heartily. After all, the more people who came here to hunt for treasure, the more prosperous his business would be. Master Joel, are we going to go treasure hunting? Caribou looked at Joel flatteringly, with a hint of expectation in his eyes. Of course, treasure hunting is such an interesting thing, how could I miss it? Joel put down his wine glass and stood up, a smile slowly appeared on his face, besides, I haven't been back for a long time. Most of the townspeople on Aska Island live along the gentle coast, while the interior of the island is covered with lush primeval forests. Carib followed Joel through the towns along the coast and into the forest. After walking for more than half an hour, he held his stomach and walked to Joel's side, blushing and said, Master Joel, I just had a bad stomach, and I want to go to the toilet nearby. Joel stopped and said nonchalantly, then I'll wait for you for a while. No. Caribou quickly shook his head and refused. The stuff in the villain's belly will definitely stink worse than devil fruit. I'm afraid it will contaminate your nose, sir. Please leave first. Once the villain is done with it, I'll follow you right away. The strange metaphor made Joel's eyes twitch slightly, and he waved his hand. Go ahead. After getting Joel's approval, Caribou showed an embarrassed smile and ran towards the nearby bushes in 2 steps. After running far enough, he squatted down, opened a gap in the grass, and peeked at Joel's retreating figure. Amidst the rustling of the grass in the breeze, the pounding heart gradually reduced its beating frequency. The nervousness gradually turned into joy. Success. Unexpectedly, after struggling for so long, I, Caribou, finally got rid of that guy and no longer had to suffer his beatings or do those chores. As expected of me, Caribou, even these treasures now belong to me. Caribou thought with excitement. Advertisement. But soon, he calmed down, and when he thought of Joel's unpredictable nature, he couldn't help but shuddered, and whispered. But we can't just relax our vigilance. The most dangerous place is the safest. I'm going to hide on this island for a while. I'll wait until that guy completely gives up looking for me, and then I'll find a chance to leave here. The sky was getting darker and darker, and after passing through the jungle with mottled tree shadows, I saw that the setting sun in the sky had half dark. Joel stopped, looked at the sky and said lyrically, it's been a long time since I took a walk under such a beautiful sunset. How do you feel, ma'am? No one responded, and in the quiet jungle there was only the sound of the wind, which spread far into the distance like the chirping of cranes. After a while, a graceful figure walked out of the darkness of the jungle. She wore a white jazz hat, covering her short black hair. Wearing a black short lining on the upper body, revealing her slender waist. The lower body is paired with a pair of tight jeans, which perfectly outlines the figure. I should know, there's no way I can hide. As soon as he met Nico Robin, a perfect smile appeared on his face. This is her usual expression when walking in the underground world. Whether she is surprised, nervous or sad, she will hide her true emotions with this smile. At the same time, it will not make people feel too indifferent and create hostility towards her. But if she could, she didn't want to smile like this at the man in front of her. The intuition that had saved her from countless difficulties told her that even the scheming and conspiratorial crocodile was far less dangerous than the one in front of her. But at this time, she had no choice. Sorry, no one likes to get into trouble. Robin stopped and looked at the figure who was much taller than her. So you think I'm trouble? Joel touched his chin and said somewhat intriguingly. No. After Robin was stunned for a moment, he showed a slightly bitter smile. You misunderstood me. Trouble refers to myself. No one except some idiots wants to have anything to do with me. Then, I think you have misunderstood me. I am not an idiot, nor am I a bad person with malicious intentions. Joel smiled like a gentleman and said, just a treasure hunter who happened to be passing by. Although she didn't know the other party's details, Robin was somewhat relieved by the non-hostile words. She looked calm and casually asked, a single treasure hunter? Of course not. Joel took out a piece of paper with red letters engraved on it and placed it in his palm, watching with some fascination as the paper pointed to a certain direction and fluttered. It's just that my entourage seems to be a little lost. Chapter 6 First Generation Life Card. That is, looking at what Joel was holding, Robin's expression suddenly became serious. What's wrong? A knowledgeable archaeologist shouldn't have seen the life card, right? Joel slowly picked up the life card between his two fingers and let it sway in the wind. When it comes to being identified by strangers, the Robin of the past would have vigilantly opened the distance between the two parties, leaving enough room for him to escape. But at this moment, she was deeply attracted by the life card in Joel's hand, and she couldn't help but take a step forward. Red vein-like threads appear on the surface of this life card, forming several lines of font on the left side of the card, presenting the detailed information of its owner. Name: caribou. Treasure: marsh fruit. Tyrant: none. Genus: none. In the center of the life card is a pattern composed of red lines. In the pattern, caribou stretches out his tongue and laughs, looking lifelike. In the lower right corner of the life card is a series of information such as the owner's gender, age, and height. If I remember correctly, this should be the life card of the first generation. How do you have such a thing? Robin shifted his confused gaze from the life card to Joel's face. She had browsed through the history of the origin of life cards in books. This is a creation that was spread on the ocean more than 100 years ago. Although the specific origin time and source are unknown, it is recognized in the current academic community as a product of devil fruit's ability. Although it originated from devil fruit, due to its versatility of tracking and individual detailed information, it was used for in-depth research by private scientific research organizations at the time, and was successfully reproduced. After several iterations, the craftsmanship of the life card became simple enough to be produced once one masters the principles. It's just that the functions of today's life cards are far from comparable to those of first generation. However, the significant lowering of the threshold has made it widely spread on the sea, which can be said to have changed the pattern of the sea to a certain extent. If I said I made it casually, would you believe it? Joel said with a half smile. How is it possible? That kind of production method has long been lost. Even a craftsman like Grandmaster cannot make it, let alone casually. Brush. Before Robin finished speaking, a burst of dark red light flashed against her cheek, and the fierce aura almost engulfed her body in a flash of lightning. Then when she came back to her senses, she saw Joel in front of her twirling a few strands of hair in his hand, intertwining with the bright red viscous liquid secreted from his hand, like a spider web, forming a rectangular shape in the blink of an eye. Red paper card. The brain may forget something, but the body retains the memory and presents it. Joel said, looking down at the life card about Robin in his hand with interest. Name: Nicole Robin. Treasure: flower fruit. Tyrant: none. Genus: none. In addition to the portrait of a beautiful woman in the center of the life card, the detailed information below also shows Robin's measurements, blood type and zodiac sign, and even his favorite food, bounty, etc. It's obviously just a life card, but it can feed back all the information about its owner. What kind of ability can do this? Robin couldn't help but take a deep breath, stared at the life card that had just been made in Joel's hand with a headache and said, "It's true that you didn't deceive me, but it's really not reassuring for your information to be mastered by a stranger. Moreover, the life card is held in the hands of others, which means that one's whereabouts are exposed to the other person's eyes at all times. But for treasure hunters, it would be quite pleasant to get such a priceless life card." Joel said with great interest, "After all, its owner is the only archaeologist who can interpret ancient texts today, Nico Robin." Robin did not frown, but tried hard to calm down. "Now that you know my identity, do I want to thank you for just making a life card instead of attacking me? There's no need to thank you. Treasure hunters are only interested in rare things. A treasure hunter who can easily create first-generation life cards." Robin looked at Joel with twinkling eyes, but Joel didn't intend to explain more on this matter. He just shrugged and said, "Instead of caring about such insignificant things, I think you have more important things to do, right?" Although it was not a trivial matter, after hearing this, Robin couldn't help but look up at the sky. She remembered the important mission of her trip, to find the lost fourth gem. Joel looked at Robin and said calmly, "Advertisement. I'm a little curious about what an archaeologist would do on the ruins of an ancient kingdom. If you are willing to take me, a boring treasure hunter, with you on the next journey, then I can exchange this life card with you. Back to you." Robin didn't answer immediately. It is very unwise to refuse a request from someone who is far more powerful than yourself. What's more, her intuition vaguely told her that the other party might also have the information she wanted. Just as Robin opened his mouth, a figure came galloping from a distance, and the inexplicable anger on his body could be felt even from a distance. "Stay away from my beloved Miss Robin." Along with the words from far and near, a sharp kick suddenly appeared above Joel, pressing down heavily. Joel raised his elbow lightly, placed it on top, and instantly collided with the kick. Under the gravity, the dust on the entire ground shook uncontrollably. "What?" In the astonished look on the visitor's face, Joel raised his arms, clasped the opponent's calf, and swung it outward. He threw it as if it was a heavy weight, but the person flew backwards quickly and suddenly hit a towering tree dozens of meters high behind him. Boom! The tree made a loud sound like thunder, and sawdust were flying all over the sky. "Mr. Chef, are you okay?" Robin looked into the smoke with a worried expression. "Of course, it's okay." Sanji walked out of the smoke with some embarrassment. As if to prove something, he lit a cigarette and calmly blew out a smoke ring before saying slowly, "This powerless attack alone cannot hurt me. But." Robin looked at Sanji's forehead, pursed his lips, and said, "You're bleeding." Sanji wiped away the blood stains from his forehead to his chin from the corner of his eyes, and said calmly, "It was just a ketchup spilled in my pocket. You know it's normal for a cook to carry some dipping sauce. But it's not important, Miss Robin, you'd better leave quickly and leave this guy to me." Quote. During the search for the fourth gem, he volunteered to form a group with Robin, and after getting rid of all the soldiers who were chasing him, he followed the footsteps and caught up. But after seeing Joel from a distance, he felt the danger unleashed by the other party, so he launched the attack without any hesitation. "Mr. Chef, I think, maybe there is no need to have a meaningless fight." Robin glanced at the interested look on Joel's face, then looked at Sanji, and spoke out to persuade him. "No, Miss Robin, you don't know how dangerous this man is." Sanji put out the cigarette butt and said seriously, "Both his figure and appearance are so perfect. A man like this, no matter where he appears, will make countless women fascinated by him. I will never allow such a dangerous thing to happen." Quote. Looking at Joel, who was more than 2 meters tall and with a majestic figure, he gritted his teeth. Quote. Robin, who knew the chef's nature well, rubbed his forehead helplessly, and then said to Joel, "Mr. Treasure Hunter, if I agree to the request you just made, can I forgive Mr. Chef's reckless behavior?" "It doesn't matter. I don't hate the excitement." Joel looked at Sanji with a half smile. The cook's character was indeed very distinct. "Miss Robin, what did you agree to? Could it be? There was a look of shock and unwillingness in Sanji's pupils. "We just agreed to form a temporary team. Don't think about strange things, Mr. Chef." Robin said with a smile, but there seemed to be a cannibalistic haze on his forehead. "I see." Sanji nodded in understanding, then glanced at Joel with a cold expression. "Since Miss Robin has said so, of course I will not object. But with me as the flower knight here, if you still want to take Miss Robin's idea, you'd better give up as soon as possible." "Wait, I'm talking to you, don't ignore me." Quote. Joel pretended not to hear and plucked his ears and looked at Robin. "So, where to go next?" "Well, now that you've come to this island, you must also know the legend of the 7-star sword, right?" Robin was not in a hurry to answer, but said as he walked. Joel said casually, "The legend of the 7-star sword that I heard back then may be completely different now. Please tell me about it." Back then. Today, although Robin felt a little strange about Joel's wording, he did not ask further questions. He just recounted the story described in the ancient texts at the ruins of Aska village. Probably 1,000 years ago. Advertisement. On an ominous night in the distant past, 3 princes of Askar met a beautiful witch and fell in love with her at the same time. In order to compete for their beloved woman, the 3 princes took out the 7-star sword that proved the throne, and started an ugly fight with each other. The earth and the ocean also cried as they absorbed the sorrow and resentment of countless innocent victims. Then, the 7-star sword, which absorbed the resentment and blood of countless people, attracted killing and destruction, and turned into a cursed demon sword, causing the complete destruction of the Askar kingdom. However, this is not over yet. The 7-star sword caused wars again and again in the form of blood sacrifices. The wars spread throughout this sea area, turning the sea into a world dominated by darkness. So, in order to remove the blood and hatred from the 7-star sword and save everyone, the Miko gave her life. The 3 princes who witnessed this scene finally repented and prayed to God. So they got 3 gems from the gods of Askar, and sealed the power of the 7-star sword that became the demon sword. However, on the night when the red full moon comes once in a century, the sealed demon sword will awaken and release its demonic power, attracting countless villains to fight for it. Only by setting up a barrier with 3 clean sacred gems can the power of the demon sword be sealed again. Quote. This legend that has been accumulated for countless years has not changed much. Joel asked, "What then?" Then the cursed demon sword was awakened again, and the 3 gems were also taken away. Although 2 of them were recovered by my companions, 1 of them is still missing. Robin's expression was obviously a bit unnatural when she mentioned companion, but she quickly returned to her original tone and continued. "Fortunately, I made a new discovery in an ancient written record in the corner of the stone tablet. That is, the 4th jade that can also seal the demon sword has been hidden, and what I have to do now is to find that jade." Quote. The 4th gem. Joel seemed to be thinking about something. Treasure hunters would really be interested in such legendary treasures, right? Robin looked at Joel. "I have heard the story of the 3 gems, but it would be quite interesting if it is a 4th gem that I don't know about." Feeling the wariness in Robin's eyes, Joel waved his hand and said, "But don't worry, I'm just interested in things beyond my knowledge, not Baoyu itself, and I won't compete with you." "Really?" Robin responded noncommittally and continued walking. Years of rich experience in the underground world have allowed her to accurately see through the true nature of others most of the time. Just like Straw Hat Luffy's fearless and persevering, idiot character, she vaguely saw the possibility of changing the world. It also made her choose the latter between her thoughts of death and living to see where this world will lead in the future. However, she couldn't see through the man in front of her. He clearly claimed to be a treasure hunter, but his eyes did not reveal any interest in the legendary jade. Although he looks so young, he knows the life card making method that was lost more than 100 years ago. He clearly has great strength, but he has no intention of acting recklessly. Like a giant Uzumaki, an idea popped into Robin's mind involuntarily. Looking from a distance makes people feel mysterious and majestic, but once you get too close, you will be torn to pieces by the powerful power contained within. This man is such a dangerous existence. Speaking of which, I'm curious, why are you two the only ones looking for Baoyu? Joel interrupted Robin's thoughts. Quote. They naturally have more important things to do. Robin responded calmly, but his eyes subconsciously looked into the distance. That is the direction of Asuka village. This incident originated from a pirate invasion not long ago. In order to resist the pirates, Marine Dojo coach Sokka was forced to pull out the sealed 7-star sword at a critical moment of life and death. Although he was able to kill the pirates and survive, his mind was controlled by this cursed demon sword. In order to seize the gem and unlock the seal of the demon sword during the blood moon that occurs once in 100 years, Sokka asked Zoro, who was a disciple with him and accepted his life-saving kindness, to help him complete this task. In order to repay his kindness, Zoro chose to betray the Straw Hats. But Luffy and others did not give up on their companions. With the explanation of Maya, a girl from AKA's village, they finally understood the truth behind all this. So, they decided to help Maya complete the sealing ceremony of the 7-star sword and recover Zoro. Currently, Luffy and others are escorting the remaining 2 gems to the corresponding ancient pagoda, and Robin and Sanji's task is to send the 4th gem to the ancient pagoda before the full moon, completing the last piece of the puzzle required for this ritual. Of course, the journey for the 2 of them was not smooth. The marine soldiers controlled by the power of the 7-star sword kept blocking them. Sanji also let Robin take the first step. Can't live up to their expectations. At some point, Robin had such an idea. When she found out, she couldn't help but sigh inwardly, and her mentality seemed to have changed slightly. Despite this, she still thought silently in her heart. I hope there won't be any problems with Luffy and the others. Chapter 7: The Legend of the 7-Star Sword and Ancient Technology. The sky is getting dark and night has fallen. Caribou hid his figure, sneaking behind the group of marine soldiers returning towards the marine dojo. After accidentally discovering this group of injured marines, he made up his mind. The so-called most dangerous place is the safest. That man would never have imagined that he would be so talented at hiding among marines. And in this way, you don't have to worry about food during the hiding period. After sneaking for more than an hour, the outline of Marine Dojo gradually appeared in his field of vision. At the same time, a fierce sound of fighting came from the square in front. This doesn't sound like the sound of soldiers training. With a trace of curiosity, Caribou sneaked around behind the high platform of the dojo. He climbed up the earth wall on tiptoes, lifted a branch in his hand, then carefully raised his head, pushed aside the gaps in the green leaves, and looked at the scene in the square. 2 swordsmen were fighting in the square, and it was very fierce. That person is. Looking at the somewhat familiar face of one of them, Caribou quickly searched his mind and determined his identity. It's none other than Roronoa. Zoro, the rising pirate star I saw on the bounty list a few days ago, with a bounty of 60 million. But the situation of the green-haired swordsman was not optimistic, and he seemed to be at a disadvantage in this battle. Caribou was immediately attracted by his gaze and thought to himself, is this the pirate with a reward of 60 million? How dare you break into marine base alone? Let me, Uncle Caribou, see what happens to you. The light cast by the red full moon became brighter and brighter, seeming to gradually dye the square red. Sokka, you are no longer the Sokka you were before. Zoro bit the word, Hidao, and looked at his former friend in front of him, with a hint of pain in his eyes. That's right, I'm not the same person I used to be. Sokka glanced at Zoro with an indifferent expression, and slowly raised the 7-star sword in his hand. Under the strange red moonlight, it seemed that he could see the extremely deep darkness in the 7-star sword. I'm about to be reborn, and that's why I asked you to come, to realize my dream. Sokka's face gradually became ferocious. You have been completely dominated by this demon sword. In that case, let me destroy this demon sword. Tiger Hunt. Zoro made up his mind, leaned down, and instantly burst out with powerful force like a tiger, sprinting towards Sokka. However, Sokka easily dodged this fierce attack with a slight jump, and he let out a cold laugh. I said it's useless, so let me give you a taste of this, Demon Fire, and experience the taste of death, Demon Fire Slash. After that, the 7-star sword, glowing with fluorescent green luster, suddenly burst out with a burst of powerful green flames under Sokka's swing, and rushed straight towards Zoro, covering him. This flame that was not caused by high temperature did not emit any hot air waves, but the intense pain that felt like every drop of blood in his body was being burned poured into Zoro's mind in an instant. Even with his rock-solid will, he couldn't help but almost fainted from the pain. He gritted his teeth, and his strong fighting instinct caused him to wrap up the demon fire in his body and rush towards Sokka in front of him. Fire. Ghost Slash. The thunderous sword movement whipped up the surrounding violent wind, extinguishing the demonic fire around him and slashing at Sokka. However, this powerful sword did not work. How possible? I should have chopped him down. Zoro had a look of shock on his face. For a swordsman, the feedback the sword gives to its owner is unquestionable. At that moment, the collision feeling from the blade was obviously that his slash hit the opponent. But Sokka didn't seem to be hurt in any way. No. It's that demon knife. Cold sweat broke out on Zoro's forehead, and he saw the wound under Sokka's robe healing quickly under the green flames. Compared to the third-generation ghost sword in his hand, which was regarded as a demon sword, I'm afraid, the 7-star sword held by Sokka is a real demon sword infused with some kind of power. You should be able to sense it to some extent. The power of blood contained in this 7-star sword is simply not something you can deal with. Advertisement. Sokka showed a cruel smile, but don't worry, I won't kill you immediately, I will let this 7-star sword slowly drain your blood. Demon Snake. Fang Strike. As soon as he finished speaking, the 7-star sword in his hand turned into a strange green demonic snake and pounced on Zoro. Zoro hurriedly slashed at the demon snake in front of him, but no matter how much he slashed, the demon snake transformed by the green light returned to its original shape in the next moment, and immediately bit him on the neck, shoulders, and waist. Located in some ruins in the south of the island. Here we are. Robin walked among the ruins and finally stopped in front of a dilapidated stone room. I only leave this thing for those who come after me. She read the ancient words engraved on the door of the stone chamber, and then pressed her palm on a hidden grid somewhere on the stone wall. Gron gron. Accompanied by bursts of sounds, the door of the stone chamber was opened. As expected of an archaeologist, Joel looked at Robin's familiar movements, couldn't help but nodded in approval, and followed into the stone room. The huge stone chamber was very empty, with a huge stone slab placed in the middle. Robin had seen historical text tablets in Alabasta, so he was extremely sensitive to these tablets, and his expression suddenly became extremely serious. She lit the firefold and read the ancient writings on the stone slab word for word. Under the dim candlelight, the expression on her face continued to undergo complex changes. Miss Robin, does this stone tablet contain any information about the fourth gem? After Robin had almost finished reading, Sanji asked. There is no fourth gem. The record is just an introduction, to guide the newcomers here. Robin took a long breath and said with understanding, it's no wonder that the stone tablet collapsed exactly at the location where the text was recorded. On the stone tablet in the ruins of Arca's village, the picture and text only record that, the three princes took out the 7-star sword that proved the throne because they fell in love with the same Miko, and started fighting for it. After that, the content was completely lost, and was only passed down orally by successive generations of witches in Arcas. But in fact, the Miko did not die like the ending of the story. Not only did she survive, she also retained her own bloodline heirs. What is going on, Miss Robin? Sanji looked at Robin with confusion. After searching around the empty stone room and finding nothing, he vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Does this stone tablet record the truth about the demise of the kingdom of Arcas? Joel said lightly. Have you seen the record on this stone tablet? Robin looked at Joel in surprise. I can't understand these complicated words, it's just my earlier guess. This indeed records the truth about the fall of the kingdom of Arcas. Robin's voice paused. The legend of the 7-star sword is not completely compiled, but the deletion of part of the content makes the facts essentially different. Tell me about it, I'm very interested. Joel's unfocused eyes became much brighter. This is not a history that needs to be covered up. Robin just pondered for a moment and then narrated according to the words on the stone tablet. In the distant past, all kingdoms stood side by side, and among them was Arcas. King AKAs loved to observe the astronomical phenomena, so someone presented the king with a sword made of the 7 stars of the sky, the 7-star sword. The king was extremely happy and regarded it as a national treasure. However, he did not know that this was a conspiracy called ancient technology. The mad scientist injected the demonic power into the sword and used the changes on the entire island as an observation object. Under the influence of this demonic power, people on this island seemed to be able to see the red moon. Then, the old king died, and 3 young princes jointly ruled the country. But the experiment didn't end there. One day, a mysterious and beautiful witch came to the island. The witch confessed her love to the 3 princes respectively, and made the 3 princes fall in love with her. Advertisement. As a result, the 3 princes who were originally close turned against each other in order to possess the witch. They took out the 7-star sword, which was regarded as a national treasure, and used it as a bet. The winner will be the only king who enjoys everything. The huge waves of war harvested one life after another, gathering countless blood into this 7-star sword, until the country was destroyed and the entire sea area was in turmoil. And the 3 princes finally died tragically in this cold killing. Probably when this crazy scientific experiment came to an end, the witch took out 3 gems that could interfere with the devil's power, trying to extract the devil's power from the 7-star sword. But this unprecedented experiment ended in failure, and the power of the devil was still entangled in the 7-star sword. The unwilling Miko did not give up. She spent her whole life studying this 7-star sword, and left descendants in the name of guardianship. She continued this experiment in cooperation with a certain scientific organization. It wasn't until the blank 100 years passed that the experiment was completely terminated due to force majeure, leaving only the bloodline of the Miko, the 7-star sword, and the name of the experiment. Bloodline factor. Quote. It sounded more like a ridiculous story, but at this moment Sanji couldn't help but be stunned, and the thin cigarette he had just taken out of his pocket was subconsciously broken into two pieces. Miss Robin, are the records above true? Sanji came to his senses and tried to hide the discomfort in his expression. Although this history was recorded by later generations, I'm afraid it's all true, because the person who recorded this history was Dr. Clover of Ohara. Robin mentioned in a nostalgic tone the director of the Ohara Omniscient Tree Library, an authority in the archaeological world, and Clover, who was her first teacher. Although the vicissitudes of stone slabs have been covered with cracks and gravel due to the erosion of time. But vaguely, Robin seemed to see a young figure carving words appearing in front of him, gradually overlapping with the old man who was old, kind, and always laughing in his memory. Robin, you know, the main reason I became a historian was because I heard the story of a man who. In order to follow that man's footsteps, I embarked on a journey around the world alone at the age of 16. Quote. It was on a clear and moonlit night that the old man and the young girl said this with a book in their hands. Since Dr. Clover knows so many things, then he must know how to seal the 7-star sword, right? Sanji's voice interrupted Robin's thoughts. Robin buried that longing deep in his heart again, exhaled, nodded and continued. It is recorded here that although the bloodline factor experiment has been terminated, the power of the devil in the 7-star sword has not disappeared. Not only that, after a certain man appeared more than 100 years ago, that power became even more ready to move. No one knows what he did to that demonic sword, but as long as he gets close to that demonic sword, his reason will be swallowed up by indescribable thoughts. Even if I gather enough gems, I'm afraid I won't be able to suppress the demonic power in the 7-star sword. But that doesn't mean there's no other way. Quote. Robin's voice paused. She stretched out her hand to touch the last text on the slate and read slowly. These demonic powers that rely on human desires are ultimately disgusted by the mother of nature, the sea. If you want to completely seal this demon sword, just sink it to the bottom of the sea. Clover. Use the sea. Sanji murmured thoughtfully, and then said to Robin, Miss Robin, let's take this news back quickly. Mr. Chef, I'm afraid there isn't much time left before the full moon reaches its peak. If you are quick on your feet, go back and tell them. I will follow later. Robin looked at the slightly hesitant Sanji and smiled slightly. Don't worry, I have no plans to leave the melee for the time being, nor will I leave without saying goodbye. Miss Robin, you misunderstood, that's not what I'm worried about. Sanji glanced at Joel, and then whispered in Robin's ear. It's just, a man and a woman alone are too dangerous. Miss Robin, you must be wary of this guy and protect yourself. Well, like a big sister coaxing a child, Robin watched Sanji leave with gentle words, then turned to look at Joel, her expression calm. Except for scholars who specialize in research, I have rarely seen anyone care so much about past history. How to say? Joel turned his back to Robin and said slowly, I have explored many things in this world, but there are still many blanks that I don't know. Just like a long time ago, I integrated my own blood into this container called the 7-star sword, but I didn't know much about its origin, which has always been something I regret. Quote. Integrating into the blood, Robin frowned slightly as he looked at Joel's face, and the fragments of his thoughts were vaguely connected together. Suddenly her pupils dilated, showing an extremely shocked look. Who are you? Chapter 8 7-star sword broken. Marine Dojo. Sokka coldly withdrew the 7-star sword from Zoro's body and looked in the direction of the altar. He clearly felt that Maya, the descendant of the witch's bloodline, was standing there praying at this moment. Even without the 3 gems, her existence was still like a sword of Damocles hanging above her head, dangerous and dangerous. Abandoning the dying Zoro, Sokka walked towards the altar. As long as he controlled Maya before the full moon and let the 7-star sword be unsealed without any accident, then the world descended by darkness, the world washed by countless bloody storms, will eventually be in his possession. However, he stopped. A man in a straw hat blocked his way. Straw Hat Boy, I originally thought you were dead a long time ago. A sneer appeared at the corner of Sokka's mouth. I won't lose to you. Luffy's eyes were firm and he rushed towards Sokka with quick movements, retractable, rubber gun. The right hand suddenly extended and kept hitting forward. Aren't you still giving up? Sokka easily dodged Luffy's successive attacks and swung the 7-star sword. The green flames on the 7-star sword instantly condensed into huge flame bombs and shot out. Rubber. Bazooka. Luffy stretched his hands back, used the power of inertia to catch the fire bomb head on, and knocked it back with his backhand. The flame bomb exploded when it hit the ground, and countless rocks flew away. However, the price of receiving this blow was the burnt skin on Luffy's palm and the dripping blood that continued to drip down. Have you felt this majestic power? Sokka didn't give the opponent any chance to breathe, bullied him, and started a close fight with Luffy. It's about to break out of its cocoon, and you can't do anything. Just be my living sacrifice. After Zoro, it's your turn, Straw Hat. Caribou used his swamping ability to carefully move his body one by one to the eaves of the round tower in the center of the dojo, looking into the distance. Too far, still too far. Even though no one noticed him, he still sighed while taking the branch full of leaves to cover his figure. That guy must be Straw Hat Luffy. Caribou held his breath, the fierce battle in front of him made him nervous as if he were actually there. He was obviously a big pirate with a bounty of 100 million belly, but he was at a disadvantage in this battle and was suppressed by the swordsman. No, to be more precise, it was not the swordsman who fought Straw Hat Luffy, but the demon sword. Even though he was not at the center of the battle, Caribou could still feel the hot flames emanating from the blade. There was a hint of familiarity that made people feel frightened, like the aura of that man. On the island, looking up, the blood-red moon was a little brighter in the vague fog, and the surrounding dark clouds seemed to disperse in fear. The full moon has reached its highest point. I do underestimate you, Straw Hat Luffy, but all this is meaningless, ha ha ha. Sokka forced Luffy back with a sword, then pointed the seven-star sword in his hand at the red moon in the sky. No one can stop me anymore. The strange green light on the seven-star sword gradually materialized and began to cover his body like mist. Advertisement. Ah, my right arm. Unspeakable pain instantly spread throughout the body, and Sokka's right arm, which had been completely disabled before, was raised contrary to common sense. Moreover, a spiral pattern unique to devil fruit appeared on his right arm. With a ferocious expression, Sokka held up the seven-star sword with both hands. The energy overflowing from the seven-star sword instantly turned into a violent wind, completely wrapping him in it. After a burst of powerful red light emerged, the strong wind suddenly exploded, knocking Luffy away not far away. Then, the endless smoke and dust dispersed, revealing its evil and corrupt face. Now, it's time to let darkness rule this world, and it starts with you. Robin ran in panic, heading in the direction of the huge noise. Evil, killing, greed, destruction, jealousy, these desires engraved in genes will give rise to powerful power. It doesn't matter anything, just because this is the instinct that is marked in the life design map. The red full moon is not a real existence, but a catalyst called psychological suggestion, which is to infinitely amplify these desires. These words kept coming to my mind. If someone else said it, she would just treat it as a funny joke, but if it was that man. All this is not baseless speculation. Mr. Straw Hat, Mr. Cook, Mr. Swordsman, Mr. Long Nose, Miss Navigator, and Mr. Tanuki, nothing will happen to you. Robin muttered one name after another in his mind. These figures that were supposed to be passersby in her life always lingered in her heart, making her unable to feel at ease. Finally, she stopped and looked at the scene in front of her. Sokka, holding the seven-star sword in his hand and with messy hair, was laughing crazily like a madman, and it seemed that nothing could stop him. There were bodies covered with bruises one after another lying on the ground. The timid trio of Nami, Usopp and Chopper, who rushed in after hearing the huge noise, were also attacked by the seven-star sword. If they had not gone through the training in Alabasta before, the injuries they suffered now would probably be more serious. For some reason, Robin felt worried. I won't be knocked down by you. Luffy stood up staggeringly again and shouted loudly, I am the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Sokka, I will stop you no matter what. At this moment, Zoro, who was seriously injured, staggered from the dojo and walked slowly out of the forest path. He bit Hidao Yiwen in his mouth. Sokka, the witch Maya thought silently in her heart. She half knelt on the high platform, looked up at the sky, and prayed silently. Robin's thoughts moved, and she instinctively noticed something, crossing her hands in front of her. Two-wheeled flowers bloom. Bondage. Along with the low groan, two arms grew out of Sokka's left and right back shoulders, tightly squeezing his throat and bending his neck back. Although he was caught off guard, Sokka quickly reacted. He reached out angrily, grabbed the arm around his neck, and stretched it outward. Snort. A blood-red burn mark suddenly appeared on Robin's wrist. She gritted her teeth and groaned, but did not let go. In the fleeting gap created, a huge shadow fell from the sky and hit Sokka. Sokka raised his head and waved the seven-star sword in his hand. The sword light split the shadow in the air in half. Advertisement. The large amount of seawater contained in the sack suddenly poured down, and through the only gap in the shadow, a pair of black leather shoes could be seen above. Awing. He let out a roar of pain, and when soaked in seawater, the power in his body seemed to wither like a withered flower. Luffy, green algae head. Sanji shouted after landing. Rubber, bazooka, three-sword style, demon slaying. As if they had a tacit understanding, no need for unnecessary words, in a fleeting moment, the two tacitly understanding figures released the most powerful attack at the same time. Boom. Under the heavy blow, Sokka flew backwards with his body arched like a shrimp, crashing into countless broken rock walls and creating a large crater of tens of meters on the ground. He fell to the ground motionless, just raising the seven-star sword in his hand. However, as the spiral pattern on his arm disappeared, the seven-star sword in his hand also turned into countless powders in an instant. Okay. It worked. Luffy clenched his fists, with a signature grin on his tired face. It's over. Sanji shook his trousers that were soaked by the seawater and looked much more relaxed. Quote. Maya walked down the platform in silence and looked at her sweetheart distress-edly. Robin's legs were paralyzed and he sat on the ground with lingering fear. We prevented the resurrection of the seven-star sword. Yeah, the weak voice suddenly exploded in everyone's hearts like a thunderbolt from the blue. Sokka, who was lying on the ground, opened his eyes again and stood up with a weird posture like a corpse. Although the seven-star sword was shattered, the green mark of the seven-star sword appeared on his chest. What? Everyone couldn't help but be shocked at this moment, and their expressions became extremely heavy. Has the power in the seven-star sword been transferred to his body? Robin opened his mouth slightly, looking at the scene in front of him in disbelief. What a terrifying force this is. Even if all the Straw Hats go all out, they still can't defeat this guy. What's wrong? Luffy tilted his head in confusion. However, Sokka did not respond. He just raised his finger, and the extremely sharp sword energy was instantly released, directly knocking Luffy away in front of him. The lingering sword energy penetrated the thick rock wall unabated, stirring up a wave of more than 10 meters high on the lake behind. He's gotten stronger. Sanji put down the cigarette in his hand, and the mood he had just wanted to celebrate his victory was gone. Quote. Zoro looked wordlessly at his former friend who seemed to be completely under the curse. The pain on his body made him kneel on the ground. It won't end, Sokka whispered expressionlessly, and in an instant, the violent and dark power in his body burst out like a tide. Even just this momentum made everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates present involuntarily cover their bodies, feeling a sense of powerlessness in their hearts. No, it's over. Stepping from the deep darkness of the jungle into the bright glow of the stone slabs, a man in a black cloak walked out as if he was strolling. Along with his steps, the strange moonlight in the sky seemed to fade away from the red gauze, revealing his bright true face. God, things have changed. Chapter 9 Bloodline Factor. The bright moonlight poured down on the rough sea, and then fell on the calm and silent land. Sokka's body, filled with the power of the seven-star sword, felt a magical pull. This pull made him look at the man who was slowly approaching with the whites of his eyes that could no longer be called eyes. He raised his hand and aimed it numbly at the man. But the fingers that he could easily bend just now felt like they were being pressed down by a heavy mountain, preventing him from making any more movements. It's the blood in the body that is resisting. It's over. Joel stopped walking with an indifferent expression. This experiment related to the blood factor has produced results. He raised a hand in vain. Sokka only felt that the pulling in his body was getting heavier and heavier, and the pain was getting more and more painful. It was like being pulled out of a cocoon, and the power in his body was being extracted finally, bit by bit. In the extremely severe pain, the boiling blood poured into his chest like a swarm, illuminating the green seven-star sword mark with a dazzling light. After this short period of brightness, the mark of the seven-star sword escaped from his open mouth as if it were alive, and fell into Joel's palm under the incredulous eyes. Sokka, who was arrogant just now and threatened to plunge the world into darkness, was now stripped of his power without any resistance and fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. The sudden change of situation almost made everyone present with Straw Hats unable to turn their heads, and were still a little stunned in place. Just now, what happened? Hey, have you seen it? He took away the power of the seven-star sword. This guy must be more terrifying than Zoro's friend. Usopp held up his broken right hand. This was the feedback he had received after sneak attacking Sokka from behind. Although he escaped the incoming sword light, his wrist was broken by the heavy stone rolled up by the sword light. However, at this moment, he no longer had the intention to talk about his unparalleled courage. Instead, he shouted with excitement, trying to wake up his companions who were still confused. We better run away. But Chopper, who had bruises on his face and injuries all over his body, looked at the lake behind him and responded weakly, we have no way out. With Luffy and the others here, there won't be any problem. Trust Luffy. Nami held up the climate stick in front of her with a solemn look on her face. Having said that, your legs are obviously trembling. Hey, wait, why are you retreating? Advertisement. Hello, don't hide behind me. And Chopper, don't imitate Nami, you are so strong, you should be our shield. Quote. Usopp shouted towards Nami who was hiding behind him and Chopper who was hiding behind Nami with a black line on his face. Even if you praise me, I won't be happy. The reindeer couldn't help but twist its body happily. Sanji looked away from the noisy trio and looked at Joel solemnly. As the only one of the Straw Hat Pirates who has met each other and had a brief encounter with each other, he knows very well how powerful the other party is. However, the scene before him made him realize that he still seriously underestimated the other party. If this mysterious and treacherous man were an enemy, then, there will be a disaster more violent than the seven-star sword, which may completely destroy this nascent pirate group. Quote. How could he not be able to stop it? Robin was stunned on the spot, a little lost in thought. She had thought about this problem just now in the stone chamber. Since he could use this factor container, he should also have a way to control it. But what she still doesn't understand is the purpose of Joel finally taking action at this moment. Would it make him happy and excited to be like a savior and save everyone from life to death? Or in other words, would playing with everyone like a demon and controlling the life and death of others at will bring him pleasure? No, he won't be so boring. Robin thought at last. Joel stared at the blood mark of the seven-star sword in his hand. Under the surface of the blood-red liquid, there is a clear emerald green color. Where the red and green blend, there is a thin blood film that wraps the tiny green flame at the core. Quote. At this moment, his thoughts seemed to have traveled to that distant eternity. Devil fruit was born out of human desire. So, how are humans born? Advertisement. How does life appear? And why is there a difference between mind and body? Does the mind lead the body, or does the body lead the mind? There are endless questions and endless explorations. As a result, someone discovered during observation that the basic expressions of life are consistent among organisms of the same species, as if everything was created according to the corresponding design. In this microscopic world, we can see the basic unit of biological construction, bloodline factors. In this life taboo called, this is the realm of gods and cannot be touched by mortals, they did not choose to stop, but continued to go deeper. Soon, they discovered that the power of devil fruit resides in the blood factor, intertwined and fused. This discovery made them aware of life or a subtle connection with devil fruit. Just as devil fruit was born from desire, they used desire as nourishment and put it into experiments, waiting for the mystery of life to be revealed. However, there was too little nutrients to support the completion of this experiment. As a result, a larger observation sample, ARCAs, appeared on the experimental platform. Killing, destruction, greed, destruction, jealousy, countless desires are gathered in the container called the Seven-Star Sword. It became the beginning of the legend. Joel glanced at the images that suddenly appeared in his mind and then quickly disappeared without a trace. This message reflected by the blood seal of the Seven-Star Sword had been felt by him once when he first landed on the island more than 120 years ago. At that time, the power remaining in the Seven-Star Sword remained in the form of blood. This power, which came from the same source as him, was undoubtedly the legacy left by a certain vampire form-capable person. And in the incomplete information mapped in the blood, you can see the results of the failed experiment that gathered huge desires, as well as the remains of the unfinished bloodline factors. He had unprecedented curiosity at that time, and now, he truly understood the missing key step towards the realm of God. Desire is a breeding ground for demons, and demons residing in blood factors will also gain greater power due to desire. But, a perfect bloodline factor is not just that. Joel turned his gaze and glanced at the straw hats. The hope that never gives up, the courage that is not afraid of strong enemies, the unswerving trust, the resolute sacrifice, and the girl's endless love for her lover. In addition to endless desires, there are also noble emotions unique to life, which together form a complete lineage factor. At this moment, this bloodline factor that absorbed everyone's emotions bloomed perfectly in the palm of Joel's hand. Chapter 10: The Fight with the Straw Hats. They are going in the wrong direction. Devil fruit is not entirely born out of desire. Joel's heart was like a mirror. He has seen too many desires born from the dark corners of the soul, wrapped in chaos, and sown in the world. As for inadvertently, he seems to have forgotten that there are also many sincere emotions. The good and evil sides are what are truly engraved in the blueprint of life. The palms were slightly tightened, and the blood marks merged into the body naturally like rivers flowing into the sea. This blood, which he had retained in the Seven-Star Sword 100 years ago, now belongs to its owner. I do not like you. The stunned boy wearing a straw hat suddenly spoke, causing all the rustling in the room to disappear immediately. The brief silence was like the tranquility before the rainstorm, and then there was the noise. Luffy, what are you talking about? Don't provoke that guy who doesn't look like a good guy. Usopp's face was covered in cold sweat and he shouted in panic. It's over. Although that guy is very good looking, he is already angry no matter how you look at it. Is my beautiful 18-year-old about to disappear here? Nami covered her mouth, tears falling like a fountain. The reindeer, who was not very good at reading the atmosphere, opened his mouth wide and stared around, sometimes looking at Nami, sometimes at Usopp, as if asking, what happened? Call. Sanji finally lit the cigarette and took a drag, then slowly exhaled the smoke. Zoro took the knife and stood up, ready to fight. The captain should have declared war. Interesting. Joel smiled. The group of pirates in front of him looked most unlike pirates. He had seen them countless times in front of the screen, but only in front of the screen. Why? He replied playfully. Because I don't like the smell of blood on this Seven-Star Sword, so I don't like you either, do you understand? Luffy said. Quote. Joel was thinking about this sentence. This weapon carries a lot of sin, and you who are closely related to this power must have created this weapon with unkind intentions, so he also hates you. Advertisement. Sanji blew out a smoke ring and said, Luffy, is that what you mean? Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Luffy nodded. Joel no longer cares about other people's evaluation of his likes and dislikes, nor does he care whether what they see is the truth. He has experienced these experiences of right and wrong too many times 100 years ago. Even if he didn't start the experiment on the Seven-Star Sword, he just put his own blood in it. But that's not important. He didn't bother to explain these complicated and ancient past, but he still said in a meaningful tone. Weapons are not divided into good and evil. No matter how I change the weapon, the key is whether the person who uses the weapon has good or evil intentions. How can the fault be attributed to the maker? Well, Luffy thought about it very seriously, and then said seriously, you are right, I don't hate you anymore. Do you make sense? Luffy finally grew a brain. Nami's tears stopped completely in just a blink of an eye, with a look of relief on her face. No need to fight, right? Luffy, you did a great job. Usopp felt fortunate and raised his hand to wipe the sweat off his face. But soon, he realized that the hand he raised was actually the hand with a broken bone, and the pain seemed to be delayed only for a moment before coming back again. Wait, my hand, my hand. What's wrong with you, Usopp? Doctor, where is the doctor? By the way, I am the doctor. It took a certain panicked reindeer a long time to react. Huh. Zoro relaxed, staggered and sat on the ground, sheathing his sword. Sanji put out the cigarette and his expression became calm. However, from beginning to end, a dangerous smile appeared on the corner of Joel's mouth. I never said that I am a good person. As soon as he finished speaking, the air around him seemed a bit colder. Even the blood-red full moon seemed to be hanging in the night again at this moment, casting a blood-red brilliance. Tears welled up in Nami's eyes again. I knew he must be angry. It's over. Let's run quickly. This guy looks very strong. We are definitely no match for him. Usopp urged his companion, while Chopper on the side was busy bandaging his wounds. Zoro stood up silently, and silently pulled out the knife again. He glanced at the witch Maya and whispered, "Take Sokka and leave here. No matter how difficult the battle is, we have gone through it." Glancing at his injured companions, Sanji took a deep breath, and then galloped towards Joel without hesitation. Advertisement. Since fighting is unavoidable, then he, who was the least injured of all, could only take the lead. It seems that you don't know how far you are from the real strong ones. Let you experience the power of being on top of the world. Quote. Joel's red pupils radiated an even weirder blood-red color. He raised his hand forward, but the empty palm was like an invisible gun barrel. Just standing there, it produced an incomparable pressure that made people's scalp numb. Blood inflammation. A shallow arc was drawn at the corner of his mouth, and immediately, blood-red sparks emerged from his palms. In just an instant, a few sparks suddenly turned into a huge wave of crimson flames, like the continuous torso of a giant centipede, pushing wave after wave and rushing forward crazily. That is, Zoro's pupils suddenly dilated. Even though the flame wave was not coming towards him, the aftermath still made him feel a palpitating and familiar burning sensation. This was what he had experienced in the battle with Sokka just now, the flame that was the same as the demon fire, and even the blood seemed to be burned away. No. His intuition told him that this wave of flames was 100 times more terrifying than the demonic fire. The blood-red flame waves were like destroying mountains and collapsing the ground, as if plowing everything in front of them into flat ground. Facing the blood and fire rushing towards him, Sanji's face turned red. The crazy fireworks seemed to be flashing and dancing in his pupils, but for some reason, he was deeply attracted by the inexplicable power in the fireworks, as if he could also use this ability. It was as if he was about to rise from the ashes. Boom. The terrifying blood fire destroyed everything in front of it, and after smashing the fragile rock wall into pieces, it continued to stir up thousands of waves on the lake's surface, and penetrated the woods for more than 300 meters, frightening countless birds and beasts, and then slowly disappeared in the air. Standing at the source and looking straight at it, it is an extremely wide straight line that can already be called a road. You can see the end at a glance, and there is nothing blocking the road. In other words, anything that tried to block it had been shattered into pieces, leaving only hot and dry air. Sanji. Luffy let out a heartbreaking yell. In the face of absolutely powerful strength, even they who had just defeated the Baroque Chinese society, still looked so weak. Sean, where's Sanji? Nami and others were also stunned. At this moment, an unprecedented sadness of losing their companion surged into their hearts. Zoro looked at the few bubbles emerging from the lake's surface, and his frown finally relaxed slightly. Fine. Chapter 11 Gunpowder Star. Wow. A head of golden hair appeared on the lake, followed by his iconic curly eyebrows, and soon, Sanji's face appeared in everyone's sight. Great. Sanji, he's fine. Seeing Sanji climb up from the lake, the hearts of the Straw Hats finally dropped a little. Ahem. After choking out the water he had accidentally inhaled into his lungs, Sanji finally regained his breath and looked at the deep ravines in the woods behind him with lingering fear. He did have the idea of forging ahead through the flames just now, but in the dark, he seemed to see a miserable future in which he would be burned up by the flames. Although it was only a moment that flashed through his mind, it was this moment that caused him to explode at an astonishing speed far beyond normal, and he hid under the lake in a critical moment of life and death. Are you saved? No, things haven't gotten better at all. Sanji looked at the tall figure standing quietly in front of him, and his heartstrings tightened again. In the face of the huge disparity in strength, even if everyone rushes forward, they are just moths flying into the flame, without any chance of survival. After thinking about this, his expression became unusually calm and he said, "Hey, Usopp, you and Nami Chopper and the others go first, and Green Algae Head, you take Luffy away. Miss Robin, leave quickly. Leave this place to me, I can drag this guy to the port where the ship is parked. Go, I will meet you there." The gravel on the ground is rolling, stone chips are rustling down from the remaining walls, and the ripples on the lake have become calm. Under the moonlit sky, there was no more unnecessary movement on the earth. Don't want. The willful voice came from the young man's mouth, which was particularly loud in the silence. A straw hat was placed on his head, covering his eyes. Luffy. Sanji shouted. Kappa, didn't you hear clearly? The captain said. No. Zoro gave a cold smile. Since Luffy said it, Usopp gritted his teeth and said with difficulty, then I can't leave like this. Yeah, Chopper nodded heavily. I would be sorry if I couldn't draw a complete map of the world. Nami lowered his head in frustration, but quickly raised it again, his eyes full of determination. But there is something more important than my dream. I want to protect it. You. Although he knew this was the result, Sanji still stomped on the ground angrily. These idiots had no idea what kind of monster they were facing. Miss Robin. When he looked at Robin, the latter just shook his head slowly and calmly. One by one, they are all so stupid. Do we all have to die here? Sanji wanted to curse angrily, but he couldn't get the words out. He muttered, and finally turned into a shout of encouragement. Then, let's fight. You don't need to tell me. Zoro clenched his teeth and drew his sword, ready to strike. Advertisement. Rubber rubber. Machine gun. There was no need for any declaration, the hurried figure represented his attitude, and dense fists filled the sky in an instant. That's all right, let's play with you. Joel was smiling, and the excitement really sprouted from the bottom of his heart. It would be difficult for any time traveler to refuse a confrontation with the Straw Hats, even if he has spent a long time in this world. The cloak behind him moved automatically without wind, and was held in Joel's palm, covering his front. This soft black fabric is like an indestructible shield at this moment, with a bloody ancient aura, blocking all the fist shadows in the sky. Wow. But after hearing a soft sound, Joel calmly threw off his cloak, and immediately, countless fist shadows rolled out with Luffy's body. Luffy stumbled onto the ground and stood still, looking at his painful fist with doubt. Why? My fist clearly didn't touch the opponent, it was like hitting the air, but why did I feel pain? Isn't it rubber? Three-sword style, awesome needle. In the short gap created by Luffy, Zoro was already rushing forward like a mad bull, the two long knives in his hands clashing like horns. The thin and flexible cloak revealed the red lining, and it was raised only slightly, like the red cloth of a bullfight, completely covering Zoro's figure. Cut. Zoro's face darkened, and his years of accumulated combat experience allowed him to change his moves instantly, and he moved his sword forward with both hands, as if to chop the cloak in front of him into pieces. The blade of the knife was only a small distance away from the cloak. However, as the knife expanded outward, the cloak also floated out, like two parallel lines that could never intersect. In an instant, the two of them passed by each other, as if nothing happened. Only a black cloak fell gracefully like a curtain. Shuro. Shoot. In this flash of lightning, black footprints struck from the air behind him. He gathered all his strength into one kick and kicked Joel on the back of the neck. Sanji struck with all his strength, but Joel's head didn't turn at all, as if he didn't even bother to look back. Clang. However, just when Sanji thought he was going to hit the target, something unexpected happened. I saw Zoro holding the knife in both hands, completely blocking Sanji's offensive. He turned his hands, and then slashed two intersecting arcs in the air, knocking the latter away hard. Green algae head, you, what are you doing? Sanji stood up again and looked at the swordsman who betrayed him again with disbelief. I was controlled by this guy. Zoro bit the word, Wado, in his mouth and said with difficulty. In the gap between him and Joel with their backs to each other, one could vaguely see filaments that seemed to be there or not, shining with a faint red light under the moonlight. Joel fiddled with the blood thread wrapped around his fingertips with interest, and Zoro slashed at Sanji step by step like a puppet. Hey, with so much strength, do you really want to chop me to death? Green algae head. You be asterisk 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 D curling your eyebrows, I told you, I was forced to do so. It looks more like public revenge. While the two were fighting, they started arguing again in an unharmonious manner. Advertisement. At this time, the skinny reindeer turned into a deer shape and ran fast. It jumped, stayed in the air, and then suddenly turned into a human shape, with its two hoofs joining together. Carved hoof. Sakura flower. Just when it was about to slam forward, the figure suddenly transformed into 5 shapes, forming a semicircle and surrounding Joel in the center. 5 hooves fell down at the same time. Joel flipped his fingers and slashed at Sanji. Zoro immediately withdrew his posture, flew over with a look of extreme displeasure, and turned into a human shield in front of Joel. Hey, Zoro. Chopper, who didn't react, screamed subconsciously. While he hurriedly retracted his strength, he also revealed his true body in several shadows. In an instant, an extremely invisible line of blood surged out, and the red light disappeared in the night. The attacks of the other reindeer penetrated Joel's body, but soon turned into small bursts of air and disappeared in the air. The real Chopper turned around and faced the Straw Hats, seemingly joining Joel's camp and becoming the second betrayer. It stood in front of Joel and looked at the navigator holding the Tiano rod in frustration. Nami, I'm sorry, I failed the Fantasy Fairy. This move named Fantasy Fairy was created by Nami. The phantom produced by hot and cold bubbles has the effect of interfering with the enemy's judgment. I thought that cooperating with Chopper's attack would cause the man to suffer more or less, but the result was. Not only did it not work at all, but Chopper was also involved. The navigator was also worried at this moment. Joel picked his ears and scanned the people in front of him lightly, as if to say. That's it. Damn it, it's so despicable. Let them go and fight me openly. Luffy made a righteous speech. He has such a huge advantage now, how could he let them go? Although she knew that her captain was always stubborn, Nami still couldn't help but complain. In an already disadvantageous situation, they also lost 2 combat forces. The opponent's methods were so unpredictable that there was no chance of victory at all. Except for Luffy, whose fighting spirit was still a little high, everyone else didn't know how to deal with it. Even Sanji, who considered himself the brains of the Straw Hats, was only thinking about how to remove the thread that controlled Zoro and Chopper. Must kill. Gunpowder star. Just a whoosh sound was heard, and a lead bullet was fired from a distance. Although it is fired from a slingshot, the power and rate of fire of lead bullets are no weaker than any bullet fired from the barrel of a gun. Joel tilted his head and easily dodged this harmless attack. He did not touch the lead bullet. Although it would not hurt him, the gunpowder smoke produced by the explosion would make his image less respectable. Hey, you were fooled by me. Because he was forced to use his broken hand to draw the bow, Usopp was already in pain and his face was pale at the moment, but he still showed a smile that showed that his plan had succeeded. This is not a gunpowder star, but a spinning pepper star. The lead bullet flew in the air for more than 10 meters in the dark night, then suddenly turned and rushed straight towards Joel. The gap between Zoro and Chopper. Bump. The gunpowder suddenly exploded. Chapter 12. I just want to clear the second game. The gunpowder exploded, and with a thunderous sound, the pungent red powder spread like smoke. Soon, the fire dimmed and the smoke and dust gradually settled. Cough, cough. Chopper and Zoro dodged the explosion in embarrassment, but they were still covering their mouths and noses, coughing violently, and the tears and snot on their faces were almost mixed together. And Joel had settled down 10 meters away from the explosion site, brushing the dust off his sleeves leisurely, not feeling angry at all for being messed with. Good job, Usopp. Although he had injured himself 1,000 times but not the enemy, Nami still excitedly patted the sniper on the shoulder. Gra. There seemed to be a crisp sound, and Usopp, who originally had a smile on his face, suddenly became stiff. He seemed to hear a sad cry from his injured arm bone. This time, I will definitely beat you away. Seeing that his friends had escaped safely, Luffy no longer had any scruples, clenched his fists loudly, and looked at Joel seriously. It's really interesting how you don't give up. Joel finally raised his eyes, and out of the corner of his eye took in the other people present who were ready to fight. I haven't seen guys with this kind of character for a long, long time. Your determination is worthy of my full strength, but... A strong and rich blood red aura suddenly spread out, pressing in all directions like a ring. The road on the ground began to crack from somewhere, the trunks of the lush trees were crushed, almost at right angles to the ground, and the turbulent earth coiling on the lake created layer after layer of huge waves. The price will be paid with lives. Joel looked indifferently at the young pirates who couldn't even stand upright under the Conqueror's haki, which was entwined with the fruit's ability. Why all this? Discordant sounds came in the wind. Although the blood vessels in his body felt like they were about to burst at any moment, Robin still chose to look directly at the man in front of him who exuded a terrifying aura. Drive Clover said that Shui Tong is a man who follows his true heart. If you were him, why would you do something to wipe out hope, even if this hope is only slightly bright? Robin didn't take action from beginning to end because she knew from the beginning that this battle was meaningless. In that era when there was no concept of Emperor of the Sea, there was a man standing at the top of the world. Advertisement. Even if the world government quietly erases things related to that man, for those who care, his name will not be forgotten. Just like Shank's red hair and Newgate's whitebeard, the world gives them the most direct names based on their characteristics, and blood-red pupils symbolize the strongest legend of a certain era in the past. Destroying hope. Joel suddenly smiled, his aura suddenly dissipated. I'm not so unkind, I just want to let these little guys understand their weakness as soon as possible. Pirates are not just playing house. Everyone in the Straw Hats was silent. Not long ago, they were complacent about defeating the 7 warlords of the sea. Everyone was happily looking at the bounty on the bounty list. Zoro, who had always been self-disciplined, couldn't help but relax a little. He was hungover for several days, not to mention the subtle changes in other people's mentality. But at this moment, although the pressure on their bodies has been relieved, their hearts are inevitably a lot heavier. Even Luffy, who had always refused to admit defeat, did not offer any rebuttal. Certainly. Joel continued lazily, I have only completed 1 week of the game, and what I have achieved is just an ordinary normal ending. If I want to enter a truly perfect ending, I naturally have to collect more elements in the second game. Trigger more fulfillment conditions. Looking at the confused looks on everyone's faces, Joel did not give any explanation. You don't need to understand. I hope that next time we meet, you can become stronger and bring me more pleasure. Next time we meet, I will definitely not lose again. Luffy looked serious, his eyes full of determination. Joel turned around and left without making any response, just said calmly, Carib, let's go. Somewhere on the ground, a swamp gradually changed from a 2-dimensional plane to a 3-dimensional one, turning into a human figure. The figure glanced at the Straw Hats, whose jaws almost dropped to the ground because of his appearance, hesitated for a few seconds, and then followed Joel's pace with tears streaming down his face. Who is this guy? When did he lurk here? Everyone looked confused. After Joel's figure disappeared from sight, Usopp carefully lowered his eyelids, stuck out his tongue very slightly, and made a face. What are you doing? Pretending to be great. Just a little bit. Chopper, do it with me too. Ah, Should I do it too? Oh, is that so? The reindeer imitated the pattern. Yes, that's it. Chopper, you are very talented. What the hell? You be asterisk 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 D. There's no point in praising me. Chopper smiled happily. The two people's liveliness finally made the atmosphere less dull. Closing his eyes and thinking about the details of the battle just now, Zoro finally said. Advertisement. Indeed, if he really wants to kill us, he doesn't need to use that kind of large-scale attack or the kind of thread that controls the human body. It only takes a moment to defeat us. Sanji took out a cigarette with some frustration, but found that it was damp, so he reluctantly stuffed it back into his pocket, and turned to look at Robin in confusion. Miss Robin, why do you say, destroy hope? Who is this guy? Robin said slowly as if he was lost in memory. He is the man known as the Blood Eye, and he was the most dazzling light of that era more than 100 years ago. But many of his deeds and legends have not been handed down, and the existing rubbings of an ancient book only record the tip of the iceberg of his role in that major event. That volume records the legend that he climbed to Mariajoy alone, freed many slaves in the Holy Land, and then escaped unscathed. But since then, he quietly faded out of the stage of that era and disappeared without a trace. So I think such a man would not do meaningless things. Quote. Mariajoy, is it the place where God lives? Sanji looked at the sky calmly. Wow, God, is there really a God? Chopper looked at Sanji, then turned to Usopp. Usopp, you must know something. Yes, of course I know. God. Usopp touched his chin and racked his brains to imagine. So, he is a hero. Nami looked at Robin and remembered something that touched him. Robin said. I think he is. Zoro said. Then he should be 100 or 200 years old now. Why does he look so young? The incomprehensible things made everyone think. Hey, have you forgotten the giants we met in Little Garden before? They are all races with extremely long lifespans, so. Usopp's eyes suddenly widened, and he said solemnly, that guy is also a member of the giant family. Giants. The inexperienced reindeer's eyes widened and his expression froze, as if he was a little down because he couldn't accept this information. Is it related to the blood factor? Amid the noise of his companions, Sanji quietly meditated, and the new words he heard accidentally when he was young seemed to become familiar. Chapter 13 Koka's Life. The young man's clothes are fluttering, standing on the red line. The magnificent palace in front of you is magnificent, and the roof of the palace that reaches into the clouds symbolizes the supreme divine power, making the world look up and in awe. In the firelight behind them, there are countless creatures, including humans. They have yellow faces, ragged clothes, and scars all over their bodies. They are running for their lives. Do you know that you are entering the territory of God? Do you know that what you are committing is blasphemy? Do you know that your sin deserves eternal death and will never be forgiven? A man and woman dressed in gorgeous clothes stood in front of the young man and yelled angrily. No need to say more, just take action. I want to see if the so-called divine punishment can do anything to me. The man's expression did not change, he just stood calmly. No one dared to step forward at this stop. On this day, the world was shaken. Joel rubbed his forehead. Perhaps he had been sleeping for too long, and some vague memories occasionally appeared in his mind without warning. It wasn't a fun memory, though. Chow, Mr. Joel, are you okay? Caribou followed Joel with fear all the way. After witnessing a series of events caused by the seven-star sword, he felt even more the unfathomable strength of the adult in front of him. I'm afraid only the 7 warlords of the sea, no, only the emperors of the sea can rival him. As luck would have it, she escaped with the treasure in front of him and was captured afterwards. Regardless of how he found himself, the most important thing at the moment is what kind of punishment and guilt he will face. Caribou didn't dare to imagine or run away, and this feeling like a light on his back made him twist his body uncomfortably all the time. Joel didn't respond, or even look back at him. But the more this happened, the more panicked Caribou became. He watched Joel walk into a tavern in a coastal town and take out a barrel for him to take back to the ship. The sealed drum was sloshing with mysterious liquid, bumping in Caribou's hands, making his mind wander. Advertisement. Although there is no mark on the surface of the drum, the liquid inside cannot be ordinary wine, because there are more than 10 boxes of wine in the cabin of the Gulu. Those were drinks specially reserved by the pirate group he was a part of in order to boost morale. Wine, whiskey, ale, red wine, and all kinds of drinks were basically available. There was no reason for Joel to buy another barrel of wine, and more likely, it contained oil. If this is the case, I am afraid that the target of its use will undoubtedly be myself who is trying to escape. Caribou seemed to see himself being tied tightly with ropes, hanging on a hot oil pan, being burned by the red lotus karma fire, and making a miserable scream. Suddenly, he couldn't help but shudder and burst into tears. Father, your faithful believers will experience suffering. Please give us the gospel mercifully, and illuminate our confusion on the road ahead. He slowly stepped onto the deck and carefully put the barrel into the cabin. Caribou sat cross-legged on the wooden board in despair. After a while, he took out a wad of crumpled waste paper from his arms and slowly spread it out. The backs of 2 children, one fat and one thin, were scrawled on the waste paper. In front of them stood a kind-looking old woman, handing 2 lollipops to their hands at the same time. In the blank space of the waste paper, love peace is written. The moment he became a pirate, He decided to throw away this piece of paper, but in the end, he still couldn't bear it. Looking at the graffiti on the paper now, Caribou couldn't help but have a lot of thoughts. After an unknown amount of time, he finally came to his senses and wandered around the cabin for a while, before finally gritting his teeth and walking out of the cabin. You can't escape by running, you can't beat by fighting, you can only let others slaughter you. The cabin door opened and the dawn light fell slightly, and Caribou realized that the night had passed. On the deck, under the open sun umbrella, Joel was lying so calmly on the deck chair. Chow. Carib walked towards Joel. He originally planned that as long as he humbly begged for forgiveness, he might still survive. But the words were stuck in his throat, but he could no longer say them out, because he saw a goblet filled with some kind of dark red liquid on the small round table next to the lounge chair. That is, Caribou's mind was spinning rapidly. In just a few breaths, he thought of the most terrifying thing. The red to black liquid was human blood. This man who has released a bloody aura many times undoubtedly possesses some kind of demon fruit power related to blood. This means that he will probably need blood supplements. Advertisement. In other words, the barrel taken back from the tavern last night did not contain any oil, but a barrel of newly squeezed blood. Caribou's scalp suddenly became numb. He tried to recall everything related to the tavern he had seen last night, but found that he had been absent-minded because of worry and fear, so he did not pay much attention to the specific conditions of the tavern. The only impression I have is, the loud noise in the tavern at the beginning turned into a deathly silence at the end. Perhaps, everyone in that tavern was tortured painfully before death, and finally died of extremely tragic blood loss. Caribou's breathing became more and more rapid. He didn't care about the lives of those in the tavern, but he became more and more frightened when he thought that what he was about to receive next might be a bloodletting punishment that was more terrifying than boiling in oil. Disturbed. Joel raised his head and glanced at Caribou, picked up the goblet, sipped it slightly, and put a sliver of it into his throat. Plop. With just one look, Caribou felt his knees weaken, and he immediately knelt down and said with tears in his eyes, "Master Joel, the villain just got lost on the island, and the villain has no intention of running away." Before Joel responded, he heard a passionate voice coming from the coast. "Young man, how does it taste?" "It's the owner of that tavern. It's a taste I haven't tasted in a long time. It's very refreshing. I like it very much. Thank you." Joel put down his wine glass and raised his hand to greet the tavern owner with a smile. "Ha ha ha, as long as you like it." The tavern owner laughed heartily. The ominous red moon suddenly disappeared last night. According to the astronomy spread by ancient Arcas, this means that the island will have good fortune in the future. So, in order to celebrate this celestial phenomenon, the townspeople came to the tavern to hold banquets. Unlike those drinkers who came on their own initiative, Joel was invited when passing by. Although he politely declined, he still received the money brew, generously given by the boss. After the tavern owner left, Joel tilted his glass slightly and glanced at the frightened Caribou from the corner of his eye. "Why, do you also want to drink Coke?" Caribou stretched his neck forward. He was still confused as to why the tavern owner who was supposed to be tortured to death was still alive. When he heard Joel's words, he was suddenly excited. "Ah. Coke. Yes." Joel raised the goblet in front of his eyes, shook it gently, and watched intently as the bubbles on the surface of the liquid continued to rise, with a hint of sharpness inadvertently revealed between his teeth. Coke is life. Chapter 14 Green Blood Test. New World. This is the second half of the Grand Line known as the Pirate Graveyard. In the New World, there is a laboratory on Dantu Island, an island stationed by the Marine Scientific Research Force. Vegapunk, who has many titles such as, has the world's best brain, and leads the world in technology for 500 years, is currently carefully observing the samples in the sealed container. It was a mass of liquid the size of a finger cap, which seemed to have a deep black color due to being stored for a long time. Inside the liquid, a faint emerald green light shone like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Did this set of samples react? Along with the crisp footsteps, a calm voice came from behind. It was one of Vegapunk's 6 clones, 01, who represents integrity, Shakia. I didn't expect it. It seems that the factor in the sample was awakened. Vegapunk nodded seriously. The sample belongs to that guy. Shakia wore a helmet on his face, so his expression could not be seen clearly, but there was a hint of emotion in his tone. It can only be him. After all, even if he eats the same devil fruit, the current demon fruit power cannot crack the ability of the previous Esper. This is also the strangeness of devil fruit's ability. Vegapunk nodded. Shakia said. So, after disappearing 100 years ago, has he resurrected now? The statement of resurrection is really too loose. Vegapunk corrected Shakia's wording. To be precise, just as this factor has remained dormant, I guess he did not die back then, but fell into some kind of deep sleep. Even if it is just a deep sleep, it is still unimaginable that it can survive such a long time. I am afraid that only the giant family can have a vitality that spans 100 years. Shakia said. Of course, this is just speculation. There is no need to get too entangled in it until there is no factual support. Vegapunk turned around and said, by the way, how is the progress of PX1 being improved? All indicators have basically passed the test and are ready for mass production. Really? Vegapunk is a bit cautious. I hope that its appearance will eliminate more evil-doing pirates and bring peace to the world. Let's name it pacifist. It will definitely happen. This is what we have always insisted on, Shakia said firmly. Advertisement. But Vegapunk once again turned its attention to the liquid that was faintly emitting green light from its core. Pacifist is just the beginning. This initial blood factor sample is the focus of our next experiment. Perhaps it can become the perfect carrier to carry the capabilities of Devil Fruit, taking the performance of the PX model even further. Quote. Shakia pondered for a few seconds and looked at Vegapunk. The basic conditions have been met, so should we start the experiment? It's time to begin, Vegapunk said one word at a time, the green blood experiment. Comma. Only then did Joel remember that the record pointer for the first half of the Grand Line was different from the second half. He had only remembered that the record pointer for New World would point to 3 routes, so he asked Caribou to choose the middle route. But the recording pointer in the first half of the Grand Line does not need to be so troublesome at all, because it only has one route, so you only need to follow the direction of the pointer. Of course, he doesn't really need to worry about this matter, and he's not in a hurry to go anywhere. After all, the accidental scenery on the journey can also make him happy. As for Caribou's thoughts, he never cared about it. Whether it was betrayal or escape, he didn't care. It's like a newborn baby waving its fingers, trying to prevent others from approaching. In the eyes of adults, this behavior is undoubtedly weak and funny. Everything Caribou did, perhaps in his own eyes, was a perfect combination of strategy and action. But in Joel's eyes, it didn't make any sense. One of his 2 major hobbies now is drinking a cup of Coke that he unexpectedly got from the tavern owner. After all, if no one mentioned it, he who had just woken up from a century-old sleep would not be able to remember that there was such a good thing. Another interest is to feel the blood mark of the 7-star sword in the body. This blood mark is like Yuzu, who has been wandering for many years and returns home. It cannot adapt to the body in a short period of time, and the many pheromones stored in the blood mark cannot be released. Of course, this treasure is already in his body, and it will only be a matter of time before he can seize it. Joel is not in a hurry. Caribou wiped the deck with a rag. When he occasionally got up, he would take out the telescope on his waist and look at the situation on the sea in the distance. And soon, he was non-stop adjusting the direction of the rudder according to the recording pointer, and then doing the hard work of raising and lowering the sail. Almost all his free time was used to the fullest, which was in sharp contrast to Joel, who was leisurely reading a book. But the harder he worked, the more uncomfortable he became. Why didn't I receive any punishment? Advertisement. What kind of cruel plan is this adult planning? He thought. Since he can't escape this ordeal, it's better to come as soon as possible, so that he doesn't have to suffer like this. He once looked at Joel expectantly, hoping that the latter would torture him happily, but there was no response. Gradually, his heart grew cold. Caribou walked slowly into his room, carefully took out a permanent pointer from the package, hesitated for a moment, and then replaced the record pointer on his wrist. This is a permanent pointer recording his hometown Terai. He originally planned to make a name for himself before returning home in glory, but now, if he doesn't go back, perhaps, there will never be such an opportunity again. If you sleep with a tiger, you will lose your life one day. Comma. The seagull spread its wings against the calm sea surface, and when it was about to catch prey, it suddenly flapped its wings in panic and flew away. A marine-style warship broke through the sea waves and came from far and near. The artillery pushed onto the deck. Boom, fired shells forward, completely breaking the calm at the moment. Standing on the deck was a man wearing a marine cloak. He wore a pair of black sunglasses on his face and had a scar on his right cheek that extended from his forehead to his chin. You know what we're going to do to get these little rats from the East Blue to Dele's Island, Captain? Looking at the pirate ship scurrying in front of him like headless flies, the corners of his mouth gradually curved. I'll control the heat, Colonel Barron. Captain Marine, who had a pointed mouth and monkey cheeks, let out a lewd chuckle. As a confidant, he quickly understood the colonel's intention. Everyone listened to the order, fire concentrated fire at 45 degrees to the left. As the order was issued, the continuous sound of cannon fodder became even more deafening. The chased pirate ship was like a rootless duckweed, constantly heaving in the huge waves splashed by the cannonballs. On the deck, a heavily armed man with a gloomy expression crushed the railings on the side of the ship and said in a deep voice. Agent, what do you want to do next? Chapter 15 Admiral Krieg. The one who spoke was the former overlord of East Blue, the pirate Krieg, who called himself Admiral. Ever since he was defeated by Straw Hat Luffy in the sea restaurant Barati, his prestige has plummeted, and many of his pirates have fled and dispersed. And he has been unable to recover since then. Finally, under a Jin's persuasion, he came up with the idea of making a comeback again. After plundering a pirate ship, he and his men left the tiny East Blue and came to the Grand Line. But the brutality on the Grand Line is far from comparable to the quiet and peaceful East Blue. There are dangers everywhere here, whether it's the unpredictable and weird weather or the marine chasing after him, it really makes him suffer a lot. These days, he hasn't even had a good night's sleep. And the source of all this is the B*************** D who instigated him to step into the Grand Line again, Ah Jin. There seems to be an island in the sea fog ahead. Captain Krieg, let's hide there, ahem. There was a slight dark purple color on Ajin's cheeks, and he coughed in his mouth. While at a restaurant on the sea that day, he inhaled the MH5 gas released by Krieg. Although he miraculously survived with his extremely tenacious vitality, over time, the poisonous gas in his body spread irreversibly and began to damage his body. Now, his cardiopulmonary function has also been severely affected, and other body functions are also worse than before. Krieg frowned, covered his mouth and nose and walked away in disgust. He didn't want to be exposed to the poisonous gas exhaled by Ah Jin. If he hadn't had no pirates available, he would have thrown this sick guy into the sea. But even if he didn't do this, he still didn't bother to hide his true inner thoughts. Ah Jin also lowered his head knowingly and took 2 steps back. Okay, you notify us and let the helmsman rush towards the sea fog at full speed. We still have a chance to deal with those B************** D Marines. Krieg waved his hand, telling Ah Jin to step back, and then he looked at the Marine warship with cold eyes. Regardless of the depth and size of the ship, or the density of artillery shells, it can be seen that the rank of the commander on the warship will never be low. But why didn't that warship pursue the more powerful pirates, but instead pursued its own featureless, small boat? Krieg couldn't understand, but he didn't panic. Although there is no way to fight with the opponent in a naval battle, as long as you reach the land. He is confident that he can torture the other party to death by relying on his strange strength and various means. Advertisement. Moreover, the most important thing is that this fully equipped standard warship will also be able to be used by him. You will soon know who is the prey. Krieg sneered. The pirate ship almost approached the island smoothly. To be precise, it was more like being driven to the island, because as long as it changed direction, the cannonball would hit the hull with incomparable accuracy and tear a piece of the hull apart. In this case, there is no choice. When the pirate ship was about 1 kilometer away from the shore, the shells suddenly became extremely dense. Tons of firepower poured down, completely covering the entire pirate ship. In just a few blinks, the entire hull was riddled with holes and was on the verge of collapse. Jump off the ship! Jump off the ship! I don't know who shouted first. The pirates immediately jumped off the deck in fear and swam to the nearby coast. Looking back at the pirate ship that was about to disintegrate, it had sunk into the sea, with only the mast still exposed. Krieg climbed ashore in embarrassment, wiped the water stains from his face, and looked at the approaching warship with a gloomy expression. Line up! Get off the boat! With a sharp shout, the Marines trotted down the ship's ladder, quickly landed on the shore, formed a team, and raised their weapons towards the pirates who were kneeling on the ground and gasping for breath. Yes, you are such a stubborn mouse. You haven't escaped yet. Do you want to resist? After saying this, the team retreated to both sides like waves, and Colonel Barron of the naval headquarters, wearing a cape, walked out slowly. Krieg suddenly smiled sinisterly and said, "When I was in East Blue, I also killed a lot of Marines. It's just the weakest East Blue." Barron showed no sign of being angry at all and just sneered, "I didn't expect that idiot Smoker couldn't even guard the door well and let a bunch of rats escape. Lord Barron, Smoker Commodore has left Logue Town some time ago, and now he has been transferred back from the branch with the approval of the headquarters." Before Captain Marine finished speaking, Barron's expression suddenly changed. "Commodore. When did that idiot get promoted?" "It's the 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted. "Idiots, you don't take me seriously." Advertisement. Krieg suddenly burst into action, and his cunning and ruthlessness honed over many years in East Blue allowed him to quickly seize this opportunity to attack. He put his hands behind his back, quickly took out a huge axe, rounded it up and hit Barron on the head. He was confident that this heavy axe, with the help of his extraordinary strength, could chop the opponent from the top of the sky to the sole of the foot. Even if the sneak attack couldn't kill the opponent on the spot, he still had backup options. "Careful, Lord Ballon," the captain screamed. "Annoying rat." Barron's face was slightly angry, and he did not retreat at all. Instead, he faced him. He caught the giant axe with one hand covering armament hockey, and punched Krieg in the abdomen with the other hand. The powerful and heavy blow was like the collision of a warship. Krieg suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his body suddenly flew upside down for dozens of meters like a cooked shrimp. Lord Krieg. The surrounding pirates watched with trembling bodies as the captain was easily defeated, and the fear of being destroyed by the Straw Hat pirates once again came to their hearts. A**hole. B********D. How could this happen? Krieg knelt down with difficulty, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. He thought that his extraordinary strength was unparalleled, but he repeatedly ran into obstacles in this sea and was useless. For a time, even the psychological defense line was completely defeated, and there was no longer any thought of resistance. "Akin. Stop them," he growled, then stood up and ran away without looking back, leaving only a figure like a bereaved dog. "Want to run? Fire." The captain laughed evilly, raised his right hand, and countless black gun barrels were aimed at Krieg's back, and the sound of bullets was immediately heard. Clang, clang, clang. The crutches with the iron balls attached to them were just hanging in the air, knocking down all the bullets. Ah Jin lowered his eyes and didn't say a word. He just stood upright, like an invisible dividing line, separating the Marine in front of him and the captain behind him into two worlds. "Lord Baron, the little mouse escaped, is it okay?" the captain asked. "It doesn't matter. If it leaks, it leaks. There's no rush to close the net now." Baron just looked at the scene in front of him calmly, then looked sideways and said, "By the way, Captain, you just said, how did that idiot smoker become the Commodore?" Chapter 16 Love and Peace. Caribou stood at the bow of the boat, entranced. From early morning to now, he has only been busy for 6 hours, but since the beginning, he has taken a full 4 minutes of leisure. Although I was a little worried about whether my rest time was too long, I still couldn't help but look towards the end of my field of vision. This was his first time to go to sea. He originally thought that after leaving the place where he was restrained, his life would be extremely free and beautiful. But in fact, every time he encountered difficulties, what made him persevere were the guys he hated, his brother Crib and the old woman who always liked to talk about love and peace. A distinct marine flag gradually appeared at the end of the field of vision. Where the flag stands is a huge fortress with the words, G46, clearly engraved on the rampart. Caribou's brows couldn't help but twitch, and he felt panicked. That must be the infamous marine branch on Terai Island. He suddenly realized something, and quickly turned the rudder to the right, and lowered the sail with the skull painted on it. After avoiding the G46 branch, he breathed a sigh of relief, and his mood immediately improved a lot. Tulay Island should not be far away. Ah Jin hid in the shadow of the wall. The situation that he imagined that the Marines would pursue him did not happen. He even didn't understand why the Marines allowed them to flee in pieces on this island yesterday. But there was no reason for him to dwell on this matter. He only had one purpose now, to find the missing Captain Krieg. But after firming up his goal, he felt a little hesitant. Is this man who has abandoned his beliefs and ambitions really worth looking for? But if there is no such man, then, what is the meaning of my existence? How should I spend the rest of my life? The sound of slight footsteps suddenly brought Ah Jin back from his thoughts. He leaned down warily, put his crutches in his hands, and looked away. We suspect someone is hiding pirates, everyone open the door now. The Marines strode into the village. The elderly village chief and a group of villagers hurriedly greeted them, but they were pushed down by the leader, Sergeant Marine. Go in and search. Advertisement. Following an order, the soldiers filed in through the door, followed by the sound of broken pots and pans. Sir, I found some stolen goods from pirates. The soldiers walked out with scattered gold, silver, jewelry and stacks of Baileys. Sir, that is the money we have worked hard to save over the past few years. It is life-saving money for the medical treatment of our children. It is not some pirates' stolen goods. The young couple cried with tears in their eyes and almost fell to their knees. Yes, sir, they are all dutiful people in the village, how could they be related to pirates? The village chief endured the pain, stood up quickly, and forced a smile. Now the island is full of escaping pirates. We, Marine, must strictly investigate and handle things without any mercy. Or, you have colluded with pirates, so you are hindering Marine from doing things. The captain squinted at the village chief, who swallowed and did not dare to answer. Confiscate everything. The captain glanced around at the more and more villagers gathered around him and waved his hand. Sir, our child is seriously ill. The doctor in the town said that he can only operate on him if he gets the money. These are really not pirate stolen goods. Please, give us this money back. Quote. The woman shouted with tears in her eyes. The captain frowned. Colonel. The more the captain looks at you now, the more he feels like you are an accomplice of a pirate. Do you want to be put in prison? The naked threat made the husband's face change, and he quickly covered the woman's mouth. He couldn't help but shed tears, but he never dared to make any sound. Go to the next store and search. The captain raised his eyes and glanced around, then spoke generously. Everyone here is suspected of harboring pirates. In order to prevent innocent people from being implicated, and at the same time to prove your own innocence, please cooperate with Marine honestly. Action. Looking at the surrounding villagers who were gritting their teeth and dared not speak out, he was very satisfied. Give them the money. Back. Following the voice, a worn-out slipper flew across the air, leaving a red shoe mark on the captain's face before slowly sliding off. He sniffed it subconsciously, and it smelled like old wine. Who is it? That B***************. D. The captain shouted angrily. The old woman with hair like octopus tentacles spread out into 7 or 8 groups came out. You guys who are misbehaving, in the name of Marine, are doing things even worse than pirates. Sooner or later, you will go to hell. Advertisement. The corners of the captain's eyes twitched slightly. Where are you, stupid old woman? Are you already impatient with life? We have endured it for too long. We just want to live peacefully, but countless facts tell us. The old woman looked at the surrounding villagers and shouted at the top of her lungs. Although she was out of breath, she did not stop talking at all. Whether it is love or peace, it is never dependent on others' charity, but earned by oneself. The surrounding villagers were shocked. This was not the first time this happened. Since Baron served as the base commander of the G46 branch, the Marines of this group will use various reasons to plunder the wealth they have accumulated every few years. Then, the Marines would hypocritically distribute some shriveled seeds and expired food to them as compensation, telling them that there is hope only if they are alive. In this case, everyone unanimously chose silence because they knew that if they resisted, they would be labeled as pirates. Year after year, it goes like this. The old woman's words undoubtedly touched their heartstrings. Do we have to live in such numbness forever? Have you always succumbed to power? You talk too much. The captain glanced at the villagers who were about to move, immediately pulled out the buckshot gun from his waist, and fired without any hesitation. Boom. The bullet flew out, splashing blood. The old woman fell to the ground, and the blood from the abdominal wound formed a pool of blood on the ground. The villagers stood there tremblingly, lowering their heads cowardly without saying a word. Maybe, not everyone can be changed. The old woman still smiled. She still remembered that sunny afternoon, when she was only 5 years old and still wearing braids, looking at such a handsome boy who defeated a pirate group of hundreds of people with just one person. The light radiating from his body seemed to be more dazzling and hotter than the afternoon sun. Before he left, he did not ask for any reward, nor did he mention his name or deeds. He only left one sentence. But those words will stick with me for the rest of my life. He said, love and peace do not rely on charity from others, but must be earned by oneself. Chapter 17 Spend some useless youth. After another day of sailing, the guru finally arrived at Dele Island. When Caribou saw that Joel was still lying lazily, with no intention of taking responsibility, Caribou's heart dropped a little. At this moment, he had no intention of trying to figure out what this adult was thinking. The feeling of returning home after a long absence had already filled his heart. Unfortunately, this good mood did not last long. The standard warships moored at the port and the marine station there made him realize something was wrong. The familiar depressive atmosphere in the town was like a dark cloud, covering the clear sky in his heart. He got off the boat and walked quickly towards the village. It's urgent. Joel stood up and leaned against the railing of the boat, looking sideways at Caribou's back indifferently, then stretched, got off the boat, and walked toward the town. Marine soldiers are constantly patrolling the streets of the town. Occasionally, there were loud shouts and curses at the end of the alley. If you glanced at it, you could probably see a circle of Marines beating a man, like. Street gangsters are extorting money. Pedestrians came and went in a hurry, but no one paid attention. Joel continued walking without any interest, admiring the architectural style and street layout around him. On the fountain square in the town street, there is a huge human statue 7 or 8 meters high. He was a high-spirited young man, wearing a cloak, with his slender and straight body wrapped under the cloak. At first glance, he looked quite majestic. But if you look closely, you can find that the carefully carved lines and streamlines have been worn away over time. Under the statue, townspeople pay homage from time to time. Joel touched his chin. The statue looked a bit like himself, but it was only similar in appearance. He didn't remember that he had ever shown that attitude of wanting to protect everything. He is not such a boring person. Wandering into a tavern, the original noise turned into silence as soon as the tavern door was opened. Everyone's eyes were on him at this moment. Of course, this is not his fault. With his outstanding physique and height of nearly 2 and 3 meters, he is still very rare even on the entire island. Not to mention the lazy but very luxurious temperament displayed by Joel's movements, which did not look like someone who would come to this civilian pub to drink. But he just sat down at the bar and ordered a drink quietly. Boss, a glass of iced Coke. The tavern owner was obviously stunned and seemed a little confused, but he still pushed over a glass of iced Coke. Soon, the surrounding eyes dispersed, and the sound became noisy again. Have you heard that someone died in the village to the west yesterday, and there was a big fuss? Is it the good deeds of those G46 branch bastards again? It's them. Those bastards also captured a pirate accomplice in the village. I heard that he was imprisoned in the town's jail. Today he will be taken to the square and executed in public. Anyone who resists them will be regarded as a fellow pirate. Marines are a bunch of G bastards. Drunken mantras mixed with anger and complaints came one after another, while at the bar, a man sat silently, quickly eating the egg fried rice in front of him. Boss, have another bowl. Advertisement. Joel looked sideways slightly. The man was wearing a gray and blue striped turban on his head, and his cheeks were a faint black-purple color. It seemed that his complexion was extremely poor because he had not slept effectively for a long time. You don't have long to live. Joel put down his wine glass and said calmly. Yeah, you can see it too. Ah Jin's tone did not fluctuate at all, and he continued to bury his face deeply into the basin-sized bowl, as if this was just a trivial matter. Won't you be sad about death? Not upset. He answered very difficultly, but also very easily. Don't you even have the thought of surviving? Joel found it interesting. Are you alive? Ah Jin held the rice spoon in the air for a long time, seeming to be thinking about something, but soon buried his face again and continued to wolf down. It doesn't matter anymore, I just want to regain my strength now. The toxins in your physical strength can be removed. I asked the doctor and he said I was terminally ill. Do you choose to believe me or the doctor? Ah Jin finally turned around and looked silently at the elegant man at the bar. Not only did the doctor say there was no cure, he himself also clearly felt that every early morning, there was an indescribable cramping pain in his internal organs. Moreover, as long as you exercise a little, your heart will beat violently and your whole body will sweat. And these are undoubtedly the characteristics of life weakening and entering death. But, the little luck left in his heart kept him from speaking. He looked at Joel's handsome profile, trying to see some clues from the latter's expression, but he couldn't see anything. This must be a joke. He thought. Bang. The door of the tavern was pushed open very roughly, and the marine soldiers filed in with muskets raised, and instantly surrounded everyone in the tavern. Captain, I saw that pirate enter this tavern with my own eyes. A soldier whispered. Captain Marine shouted shrilly. Everyone leans against the wall and raises their hands. Anyone who doesn't do this will be considered a fellow pirate. A rustling sound quickly came from the tavern, and the residents who had been yelling angrily just now quickly leaned against the wall. Then you two are pirates. The captain's pair of triangular eyes took in everything in the tavern. Joel turned a blind eye and shook the wine glass, while Akin suddenly stood up. This move also scared the soldiers and quickly pointed the barrel of their gun at him. As Captain Krieg in your hands. Ah Jin raised his eyes, and the crutches hidden under his wrists glowed coldly. Krieg's overestimating idiot. Yes, he will be sent to the execution stand at noon today, and will be executed by Lord Baron himself at that time. Squeak. The captain gave a peculiar laugh. Ah Jin looked at the other person. I remembered. I should have seen you in East Blue. Your name was Tiger. No, Mouse, right. Advertisement. GG. As expected of the Ghost Man agent, he also knows my name. If it were East Blue, I wouldn't kill you dirty pirates. Unfortunately, this is the Grand Line, Lord Baron's G46 branch. Even if you get close to me, I won't be able to keep you alive. Quote. The captain laughed strangely. He was the former Colonel Mouse of the East Blue 16 branch. After the Fish Man Dragon was arrested, Marine senior officials sent someone to intervene in the matter. Following the accusations from the Kokoyasi villagers, he was quickly suspended for investigation. At the critical moment when he was about to be sent to a military court, his old leader, Colonel Baron, saved him and allowed him to get out of the quagmire of the incident. Although he lost the power of colonel of the branch, he still retained the rank of captain of the headquarters. Of course, the two statuses are essentially equal. In order to prevent the Fish Man Dragon from revealing the conspiracy between the two, under Baron's operation, the dragon was escorted from East Blue's branch prison to Impel Prison, where no one can escape. As for why Baron has such power to operate this matter, it is simply because he is the disciple of Marine Chief Instructor and former Marine Admiral Zephyr. The investigators sent by the headquarters did not want to offend the complex network of relationships under Zephyr's education system, so they turned a blind eye and let it go. Of course, the mouse would be saved by Balin because he had never stopped paying tribute to Balin with the captured treasures over the years. Moreover, because Balin liked to call others mice contemptuously, he changed his title to Rat, without hesitation to show his loyalty. All of this led to his current impunity. I don't mean to get close, I'm just wondering if I can exchange you for Captain Krieg. Ah Jin said bluntly. As soon as he finished speaking, before he could respond, the iron crutch in his right hand flew out instantly, turning into an afterimage and embedding itself in the wooden door next to Captain Mouse. At the same time, he burst out with an astonishing speed, using the iron crutch to separate the marine team, and directly took the enemy's head. With one movement, he was close to the mouse in an instant. If nothing else happened, the Marines would not have time to react. But this amazing explosive power also put a huge load on his weakened heart and lungs. His heart seemed to be tightly grasped by invisible hands, and the severe pain caused his steps and movements to deform involuntarily. It was this kind of accident that made the Marines come back to their senses in shock. They swarmed forward and surrounded Ajin in the center like a tide. Although they were knocked down one after another, they would quickly make up for it one after another, exhausting the latter's little physical strength. After nearly 100 soldiers lay scattered on the ground, Ajin retreated almost fainting, feeling like he was about to suffocate. The insufficient supply of chi and blood made his face paler than a corpse that had been dead for 3 days. GG. Captain Mouse looked at the pirate who broke out from East Blue and sneered. Even though the situation didn't look good, he knew he still had the upper hand. Because behind him, there are hundreds of well-armed soldiers on standby. Can a pirate fight 100 well-trained soldiers? Even if he can fight 100, can he fight 200 or 300? Impossible, absolutely impossible. How about it? Joel looked at everything in front of him lazily. Do you want to believe me? Then, what's the price? Ajin let out a long breath. The price is. A dangerous smile appeared on the corner of Joel's mouth. Just give up some of your useless youth. Chapter 18 That year. The village was in shambles. Caribou almost ran all the way back home. Perhaps, this place will never be called home again. There were traces of looting everywhere in the house. Tables and chairs were lying upside down. The family photo of the 3 of them was also beaten to pieces. Crib. Old woman. He shouted anxiously, but no one in the room responded. What's going on? What's going on? Carib frantically grabbed everyone he passed, but everyone remained silent with heavy faces. Aunt Sally was killed by Marine, and we buried her outside the village. Crib was also captured by Marine because he made a big fuss. I heard that he will be publicly executed in the town square at noon today. The village chief, who was nearly 90 years old, closed his eyes and sighed. Like a bolt from the blue, Caribou's entire mind went blank, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Finally, he came out of his trance. Take me to the old woman's grave. The tone was calm, but inexplicably, the surrounding villagers felt a chill. The old village chief and several villagers took Caribou to the outside of the village, and then stood in the distance without saying a word, letting Caribou stagger to the simple grave alone and sit on the ground. Hey, Did you die too early, old woman? He really wanted to say this, but when the words came to his lips, they turned into a whisper. It will be very lonely when you go to heaven alone. That old woman who always loves to preach. The old woman who would hold herself and her brother up, one on the left and the other on the right. The old woman who smiles with only 2 teeth left. Caribou wiped away the tears that he couldn't stop. He didn't understand why a guy he clearly didn't like that much made him shed tears. That winter was not cold, but it rained heavily and thundered. He took Crib, who was curled up in a ball, and knocked on the door from door to door. When all the villagers saw the two of them, they chose to close the door tightly. Only the old woman took them into the house without hesitation, dried them and changed their clothes. It was that time that Crib, who had a fever, burned out his brain. But after that, they lived together. Advertisement. Later, he asked, "Why? Why did you choose to take them in?" The old woman said with a smile, "Because of love." He didn't understand that even Crib only thought it was a tool that might be able to help him. But he didn't know when he started to be jealous of a tool, because the old woman would give more good things to Crib every time, and then she taught him earnestly, "My brother is stupid, so I must take good care of him." Brother. The family atmosphere that made him extremely unhappy finally drove him to board a pirate ship and leave this somewhat boring island. But I came back to my senses. That little noise in the tranquility is what he wants to catch now, but he can no longer catch it. Old woman, don't worry, I will rescue Crib. Caribou wiped away his tears, carefully took the scribbled paper back into his arms, and stood up sadly. Caribou, those people are Marines. Even if you go there now, you will just die in vain. The old village chief sighed again. I won't die, I am no longer who I was before. Layers of brown mud gushed out from Caribou's body, and his words kept falling, covering the traces of his slow walking like heavy tears. Marine soldiers lined up like a long line on the street, escorting the pirates towards the execution platform in the center of the town. When pedestrians saw this, they fled away in fear of avoiding him. Colonel Barron, the base commander of the G46 branch responsible for maintaining order on the 4 surrounding islands, walked at the front of the team and watched with relish as the civilians scattered like mice after seeing cats. Enjoying the fear and submission of weak people is the power this piece of clothing gives him, but this is not his entire understanding of power. In his eyes, the purpose of power is to amass wealth. Drive the pirate ship to a nearby island and sink the pirate ship before the pirates land on the island. Barron is very satisfied that he can come up with this method and put it into action. What seems like an ordinary operation actually contains a mystery. First of all, this approach cut off the pirates' desire to leave the island in a short time, leaving them trapped on the island. And when this group of pirates caused a commotion, Marine could quickly plunder the wealth accumulated by civilians in the name of eradicating the pirates. Of course, it doesn't matter whether the pirates have been completely wiped out, because the threat of pirates is precisely the meaning of Marine's existence. Secondly, it is to establish prestige. Advertisement. Why do the civilians still dare not resist even though they know his purpose? This is precisely because he is powerful enough. No matter how notorious a pirate he is, anyone who encounters him will eventually be sent to the execution platform and publicly executed in full view of the public. The prestige accumulated over the years naturally makes the weak civilians dare not act rashly. At the same time, in this turbulent era of great pirates, his many achievements are obvious to all. Without touching the bottom line, the headquarters also chose to indulge him. This is also the reason why Barron has been able to sit firmly as the head of the G46 branch for so many years. Report to Lord Barron. The soldier holding the phone bug came forward and said, "The captain's phone bug can't make calls. How come you can't even do this little thing well?" Balin frowned. He originally kept the rat because he cherished its ability to make money. With such a pair of white gloves, he no longer had to do many things himself and could just leave them to the other party. Keep dialing until he answers. Barron said, turning around and looking down at the escorted prison van. It seemed that some mice had jumped out again. Puff, 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 puff. The trembling phone bug huddled in a corner, but still kept ringing. Also shivering was Captain Mouse, who fell to the ground. Mouse couldn't believe it. Hundreds of well-armed marine soldiers were like harvested rice, falling in pieces as the ghost man Jin continued to roam. Even the fish man dragon cannot do such a thing. But what's even more terrifying is the man who has been sitting on the seat from beginning to end. The mouse swallowed in fear. The shocking scene just now was still vivid in his mind. The nails on the man's fingers seemed to have stretched, and they pierced directly into the abdomen of Ghost Man Ajin. Then, Ajin's black hair turned into pale hair in an instant. Although there were no obvious wrinkles on his face, everyone could see that he had become much older. However, this aging did not make him weaker, but instead gave him the amazing power to defeat the marine troops. Although the man never took action, he still easily turned the whole situation around. Who is he? The mouse thought absent-mindedly. Advertisement Chapter 19 Life Factor. Joel touched his chin and looked at the work in front of him with interest. Did you take away my youth? Agent sat on the ground, and the iron crutch pressed against Captain Mouse's neck, preventing him from moving at all. He looked back at Joel, obviously having a clear understanding of the changes in his body. No, I didn't do that. I just stimulated the rapid secretion of hormones and the massive production of immune cells in your body, allowing you to heal yourself. You know, the limits of the human body are far more exaggerated than you think. Quote. Joel explained generously, of course, your current physical condition is probably in your 40s or 50s. This is also the price of fishing for the best. There is a mysterious life factor in the blood of the human body. Only in critical moments, it will continuously circulate in blood vessels, regulate and accelerate the secretion of corresponding hormones by various organs in the body, and repair itself by various tissues of the human body. This is also the reason why people in the One Piece world have extraordinary physiques. 100 years ago, Joel conducted in-depth development of the fruit abilities related to it. Even Agen's symptoms, which have reached his heart and lungs, can be cured by severely depleting his own life factors in a short period of time. However, the total amount of this life factor in the human body will vary from person to person, and it will not change from birth, and is usually non-renewable. This is why some people are disease-free and invincible when they are young, but when they are old, they are plagued by illnesses and hang on hanging bottles all day long. It is precisely because of the exhaustion of life factors. I see, but I'm already satisfied. Agen bowed solemnly to Joel. I will repay this kindness after I finish the next thing. Repay the favor. From the beginning, Joel did it out of temporary interest rather than seeking this small reward. But, he chuckled and said, that's not bad. Let me wait and see how far you can go in the future. Caribou went straight to the central square of the town without taking any long detours. The execution platform was empty, so he sat on it and rested his chin with his fingers interlocked. He has calmed down a lot, anger will not make him stronger. He was thinking about what level his strength was. If the opponent was Lord Joel, even 100 of himself would be defeated easily. But there should be no one in this world who is stronger than Lord Joel. So, how many naval headquarters colonels can Lord Joel fight? Advertisement. Caribou continued to calculate Joel, the only person he had ever fought with in actual combat, as a standard for combat power. There should be more than 100. After a brief brainstorming, Caribou suddenly came to a conclusion: he was stronger than Colonel Naval Headquarters. While thinking with such determination, he saw Marine's team. I saw the younger brother who had burned out his brain and was favored by the old woman because of it, lying in a prison car with bruises all over his body. Stupid brother, you must have been caught to protect the old woman. It's not in vain that she has always favored you. Caribou muttered. Elder brother. Crib recognized the figure sitting on the execution platform at a glance. It was his brother Karib, whom he had not seen for a month and missed him terribly. Hey, he smiled, with a hint of tears, and shouted, I knew my brother would definitely come to save me. What a stupid brother, you exposed my identity like this, forget it. Then let me, Lord Caribou, make a shining debut. Caribou jumped down and landed gorgeously in the flow of loose robes. If it weren't for his poor image and temperament, this would be enough to be called a protagonist-like appearance. Balin, who was looking straight ahead, stopped and felt the fearful gazes coming from the surrounding streets and alleys from time to time. Then he locked his eyes on Caribou and slowly revealed a cruel smile. The appearance of a mouse means there is another nest of mice, but that's okay. He waved his hand, and the team quickly dispersed, surrounding the entire square. Then he raised his hand and pointed, attack. Yes, the soldiers held muskets and pulled the triggers on the figure under the execution platform. Bang bang bang. The dense bullets exploded Caribou's body into a puff of viscous liquid, and it was suddenly riddled with holes. Looking through these holes, one can even have a clear view of the scenery behind him. Wah! What? The soldiers' eyes widened and cold sweat dripped from their foreheads. Although the intelligence and information available on the Grand Line is far more than in the world, this is the first time they have seen this magical power. Idiots. Try Lord Caribou's suffocating bombs. Advertisement. Before they could react, Caribou smiled coldly, and the mud ball in his hand broke into pieces and shot out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, one after another soldiers were covered in thick mud. They dropped their firearms and tried to use their hands to pull out the mud that made them unable to breathe, but they found that there seemed to be a bottomless suction force in the mud, which sucked their hands firmly in, making them unable to extricate themselves. In this silence that could not even be wailed, figures one after another collapsed to the ground and died quietly. This move was inspired by Caribou's battle with Joel. He knew how painful suffocation was. Now, he wants to repay the pain in his heart in this way, 10 times. This guy is demon fruit power and the rarest Logia. The Marine soldiers finally understood why the other party dared to challenge a branch alone. That is a very rare Logia ability user even among Marines. Seastone. Where are the Seastone bullets? The sergeant ordered his men in panic. This rare resource is not meant to be wasted. Baron raised his hand to stop the sergeant. He strode towards Caribou, his pace kept accelerating, and suddenly he disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Caribou and suddenly punched out with an unpretentious straight punch. Boom. Caribou immediately flew backwards, smashing the execution platform behind him into pieces. The bent iron frame and broken wooden boards kept falling down, burying Caribou's figure deeply in it. Snort. Balin snorted coldly. What I hate the most is Logia demon fruit power. A silver-haired man smoking a cigar appeared in his mind. The existence of that guy was the reason why he practiced armament hockey diligently. Caribou pushed away the wooden board that was pressing on him, and stood up from the rubble in a panic. Touching the bloodline at the corner of his mouth, he finally understood that the strength of naval headquarters at the colonel level was not as weak as he thought. But he also knew that he could not escape from this battle. Once he escaped, his heart would be drowned in endless regret. Caribou's body was constantly flowing out of the mud like a melted candle, and the color halo in his pupils seemed to be spreading from ring to ring. He looked straight at Baron and murmured, "Old woman, you can take a good look at it in heaven. Now I am no longer a child who needs to hide under your clothes. I already have the power to avenge you." The quagmire forbidden land. In an instant, the swamp enveloped the entire square. Chapter 20 Agent, have you not brought over the prisoner named Krieg? Captain Mouse's scolding voice came over the phone. Captain, we'll be there soon. The sergeant responded humbly. After the phone was dialed for a long time, Captain Mouse sent such an order. Although it was a wise choice to move the guarded prisoners after encountering an enemy attack in the square, but why did they choose such a wide flat area? Hurry up, otherwise you will be hung on the rack and exposed to the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. Click. As soon as he finished speaking, the phone caller was roughly hung up. The sergeant swallowed and quickly waved his hand to the soldiers behind him to speed up. After a while, the team escorting the prison van arrived at their destination. The sergeant looked around blankly at the empty surroundings and shouted, "Captain." At this moment, a black shadow quickly passed by, and then, before the small group of Marine soldiers surrounding the prison car could react, they were knocked to the ground one after another from behind. Hey, can I go? The bruised and swollen mouse captain stepped out of the shadows somewhere. He looked at a Jin who was walking toward him with a smile and moved his wrist. However, he did not see any willingness to agree on the other person's face. No, I'm just following your words. I've already taken the risk of being dismissed or even arrested. You can't. Boom. A simple straight punch hit the mouse in the face, causing him to collapse to the ground and shut his mouth completely. Ah Jin turned back and walked towards the prison car. He held the sill railing with both hands and forcefully opened the iron bars of the prison car to both sides. Then, Krieg, who seemed to be still in a daze, was lifted out and placed on the ground. Captain Krieg, thank you for your life-saving grace. I have followed you for so many years, but now, it is time to say goodbye. He kowtowed to Krieg, then raised his head after a long time and stood up slowly. Agent, do you really want to leave me? A Jingdong turned around and took a few steps, when Krieg's dull voice came from behind. Advertisement. Captain Krieg, although you didn't say it outright, I know that I have become a burden to you. Isn't my leaving exactly what you want? Agent stopped. Krieg covered a dull, painful scar on his chest, but his joy was palpable. What nonsense are you talking about? Although I don't know what happened, I can see that your body is fine. Now you can continue to fight for me and use your power to clear obstacles for me. You have always been he is my most loyal subordinate. I always thought so before entering the Grand Line, but it wasn't until I became seriously ill that I finally realized that I still had very important things that I had not completed. Agent just explained calmly, now, I want to live according to my own wishes. He didn't look back, just looked ahead. Vaguely, he seemed to see the figure of the curly eyebrow chef and the straw hat boy. The bowl of egg fried rice that moved him to tears, and the vow, see you again at Grand Line, came to his heart again at this moment. He was going to fulfill that agreement. Hey, Agent, are you serious? In other words, do you want to betray me? Krieg's expression suddenly changed and he said sadly. Captain Krieg, I have more than repaid your kindness by doing things for you without any reason over the years. Enough. You are so self-righteous. You will never be able to repay Lousy's kindness in your lifetime. No, even in the next life, you must work hard for me without complaint. Krieg completely tore off the mask of disguise, revealing his ferocious face. Ah Jin stood there. I can't do it. If you can't do it. Krieg laughed ferociously, then go to hell. After saying that, he tore off the prison uniform with intersecting black and white stripes and rushed towards Ah Jin angrily. He had always betrayed others, but no one betrayed him. Whether it was driven by dignity or something else, Krieg had never been so angry. This kind of anger caused his adrenaline to secrete rapidly. Even though he was injured now, the speed and power he could explode were far beyond normal. The muscles on his arms continued to bulge, and the twisted veins covered the skin one by one. In the blink of an eye, a heavy fist was thrown out with great force. Ah Jin turned around, knowing that he could no longer escape. No matter what, he will eventually have to face it. Advertisement. He made a fist with his right hand and suddenly struck with it. The fists intersected, and a strong wave of air seemed to explode from the center of the two people, and the surrounding dust continued to fly up. The stalemate between the two sides only lasted for a moment. Krieg's expression suddenly changed, and he flew backwards as embarrassed as a rag bag. Why is he so powerful? Krieg staggered to his feet, holding on to his right hand whose phalanges seemed to have been broken, and looked at Akin in disbelief. He tried his best but couldn't shake the opponent even a little bit. I'm sorry, Captain Krieg. Ah Jin bowed apologetically. Sorry. Krieg was stunned, and then he laughed angrily. Stop pretending in front of Lousy. I've been using you from the beginning. What a life-saving grace. If it weren't for the fact that you still have some strength, I wouldn't promote you to be the battle captain. In the final analysis, you are just a handy tool. Once it doesn't work, you can discard it at any time. Quote. Quote. Agent raised his eyes and looked at Krieg without saying a word. You have always been aware of this. In the past few years, you have done things for me just to enjoy the pleasure of being sought after by the pirates. You just used it as a high-sounding excuse to repay a favor. Krieg spat and sneered. You are even more hypocritical than me. Really? Ah Jin murmured with some trembling. So is this the image of me in your heart? So it turns out that I'm not even a partner. Partner. What a boring word. Ah Jin, remember, when I recover, one day, I will let you lie at my feet as humble as a tick, crying bitterly. Ha 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 ha. Krieg laughed wildly as he stumbled away. It turns out that all these years have been just wishful thinking. Ah Jin lowered his head, tears slowly dripping down his cheeks from his eyes. Crows of birds were circling in the sky, making strange cries, as if they were mocking. He didn't know how long it took before he raised his head. His tears had been dried by the breeze, and only the tear stains on his face proved the sadness he felt not long ago. But in my eyes, there is no more confusion. From now on, there will never be a ghost man, agent again. Chapter 21 Balon's Past. Swamp is indeed difficult to deal with, even more troublesome than smoke. If it is a seasoned demon fruit power, it will really cause quite a headache. But it's a pity. Baron just grabbed Caribou's neck and lifted him up bit by bit like a chicken. I have to admit that Logia devil fruit is very strong, but you are so weak. The corners of Balon's mouth curved in a cold arc. In this sea, devil fruit does not represent everything. Do you think that with this support, you can do whatever you want? Snort. The G46 branch is my Balon's base, and this island is my Balon's island. You rat hiding in a dirty ditch. Quote. He swung it hard, and Caribou suddenly flew out like a kite with a broken string, hit the ground, and was embedded in it, stirring up gravel. Ahem. Caribou kept coughing out blood. From the few words Joel occasionally said in the past, he learned that Logia was not invincible. In addition to things like Seastone, there is also a power called Armament Hockey in this sea that can capture the entities of Logia users. There is no doubt that this is one of the opponent's trump cards. Bang bang bang. The prison car guarded by Marine soldiers in the distance made a fierce crash, and Crib shouted, "Brother," excitedly. The sound that made him anxious also gave him a sense of relief for some reason. Fool Crib, I swear, this is the last time I save you. Caribou stood up unsteadily, one eye unable to open due to bruises, but he still said to himself. By the way, I'm not here to save you, I just want to make the old woman feel at ease in heaven. After all, she asked me to take care of this stupid brother of yours. What are you muttering about? Balin strode toward Caribou, and every step was like a heavy step on his heart. Of course, a cunning look flashed in Caribou's eyes, swamp conveyor belt. The prison car holding Crib suddenly sank, and the mud blocks that kept pouring out on the ground quickly connected together, forming a straight conveyor belt in an instant, wrapping the prison car and running away in the opposite direction. I have been planning a plan to attack the east and west from the beginning. You idiot, you must have been deceived by me. Uncle Caribou is leaving now, and I will settle the score with you in the future. After Caribou said to Balin, he suddenly plunged into the quagmire on the ground. After integrating perfectly, he immediately swam away as nimbly and swiftly as a fish entering water. Snort. Baron snorted coldly, jumped up, and briefly stopped at high altitude. With a glance, he suddenly swooped down like a sharp cone. Boom. The ground was torn open by the powerful impact, the cut mud splashed up, and half of Caribou's body was exposed in the air. Is this the only thing you can do? Baron smiled coldly and landed a hardened kick on Caribou's chest. Advertisement. The huge force made Caribou feel the severe pain of broken ribs. He took a breath of cold air in pain and fell upside down under a wall. Before he could recover from the pain, he heard the sound of footsteps, near. You don't think you're smart, do you? After the cold voice, another powerful punch came towards the face, and Caribou felt that several of his teeth had been knocked out. Boom, boom, boom. Like punching a sandbag, Baron punched Caribou one punch after another, each punch making a whistling sound and hitting the vitals. The Marine soldiers gathered around the square couldn't help but tremble with fear when they saw the scene in front of them, and they were so nervous that they kept swallowing their saliva. You died. Finally, Balin looked at Caribou, who was about to lose his human form in front of him, and withdrew his hand, bloodline dripping from the back of his fist. It's too light. Compared with Master Joel's fist, it's nothing at all. Caribou forced out a mocking smile and spoke incoherently, if that miserable look could be called a smile. Okay, I've had enough fun. Baron clenched his fists and said with a cruel smile, it's time to send you on your way. As soon as he finished speaking, a faint murmur came from the distance. Hey, it really makes me worried. Although there was a long distance between them, the sound reached the ears of everyone in the square clearly. The soldiers couldn't help but look back at the figure. Under the dark cloak was a dark red shirt and black trousers, which highlighted the noble and elegant temperament of its owner. But for some reason, there was an inexplicable and deep shudder in their hearts. Well, you're not dead yet, otherwise you'll have a headache. Joel held the burning life card in his hand until only a small part was left, and walked towards the center of the square amid the encirclement of soldiers scattered on both sides like waves. Are you also a fellow pirate? Baron suddenly looked at Joel alertly. Whatever you think, Joel said calmly. Then you die too. Baron roared angrily, kicked out, and a narrow stream of white air instantly shot out from the tip of his toe, heading straight for Joel. Marine 6 styles. Joel raised his eyes slightly and kicked his right foot out of the air. I can do the same. A streak of blood-red air flew straight out, and in just an instant, the width of this slash almost encompassed the entire square. Like a collision between a truck and a toy car, this strange blood-red light easily crushed the oncoming white airflow, and then unabated, it cut an extremely smooth incision into the surrounding houses within tens of meters before slowly disappearing in the air. Gulu. The soldiers stared blankly at the scene in front of them that made them wonder if they were dreaming, and they kept drooling. Advertisement. This is my territory, Balin, you damn B************** D pirate. There was a rage in Balon's heart. This overwhelming momentum made him seem to see himself at that time. He hated this kind of powerlessness and insignificance. He was unwilling to give in, and he would never suffer in silence like that time again. With his arm covered in jet black armament hockey, Baron disappeared from the spot and reappeared in front of Joel in an instant. At this moment, he burst out with astonishing strength, his muscles tensed up, and a punch mixed with anger was suddenly released like a tightened bowstring. Boom. There was a sound like metal colliding, and Joel raised his hand to block it expressionlessly. His eyes were still so lazy, as if he had just been lightly tapped. Bye now. After spitting out a few words lightly, Joel raised his other hand, blood inflammation. Several wisps of blood-red flames emerged from the palm of his hand, and suddenly the flames turned into terrifying waves of flames, like a giant beast that chose people to devour, swallowing up the person in front of him. Baron's pupils reflected the burning red flames, and in the firelight, he seemed to see the past. 20 years ago, a little boy ran all the way from a mountain village to a town. His straw sandals were worn out and his feet were covered in bloody blisters. He knelt in the clinic and begged, "Doctor, please, my mother is seriously ill. Please save my mother. You dirty rat, get out of here. This is a hospital, not a charity. If you don't have money, don't come here to cause trouble. I have to see the dentist of the noble man on West Street. His teeth are better than yours. Illness is much more important. All I got was push and push from doctors." As he walked through the town, he begged, "Please, please do me a favor and give me some money. I want to save my mother. Come here, you stinky country rat. Do not bother me. They're just untouchables, so what if a few of them die? Hey, you little brat, did you just steal my wallet? Hand it over to me." The only response was curses and beatings. Later, my mother left. When I left, the villagers came over one after another and divided up the few tables, chairs, simple fishing gear, pots and bowls that were in the house. From then on he understood. In this world, money and power trump everything, but weak people are powerless. He cried bitterly and burned down his house and everything that existed in the past, and has since joined the Marines. The fireworks in front of me are just like those back then, how disappointing. Balin thought to himself. Armament hockey was burned out by blood-red flames in an instant, followed by blood. In the scorching waves rising into the sky, the figure that had ruled Dele Island for nearly 10 years was completely reduced to ashes. Chapter 22 Hero. Colonel Baron. The soldiers shouted loudly, but no one responded. The situation in front of them was far beyond their imagination. The heat wave that hit his face had not completely dissipated, and there was nothing left where Baron had stood. Colonel Baron of the naval headquarters, who once commanded the 4 nearby islands and wiped out countless pirates, just disappeared from the world. That guy is a monster. There is no way we can defeat this monster. I don't want to die as miserably as Lord Balin. Everyone, let's run. The morale of the army quickly weakened. The soldiers who had witnessed everything with their own eyes looked extremely frightened. In an instant, they dispersed like birds and beasts and disappeared into the streets and alleys, leaving the empty space in a mess. Karib, you're not dead yet. Joel watched condescendingly. Lord Joel, have you come to save me? It's great. Looking at the tall figure in front of him, Caribou couldn't help but feel sore eyes. He didn't expect that Lord Joel would come here to save an insignificant person like him. If you plan to die now, I will consider taking back the marsh fruit and the wealth stored in your body before you die. Joel turned around and said, if you don't want me to do this, get up quickly. Lord Joel. A sudden surge of power surged from Caribou's body, and he immediately ejected from the ground. He tried his best to squeeze out a smile with his miserable face. Please don't take back my ability. The only person who responded to him was his broad and slender back. Sure enough, he just wanted to continue to use me. Caribou felt a little disappointed in his heart, but soon he raised his eyes, and the smile at the corner of his mouth was a little more sincere, and he didn't know whether it was due to the influence of the residual heat around him, but there was a warmth in his heart. By the way, Crib. Finally remembering something, Caribou quickly dragged his body and limped forward. Baron, the head of the G46 branch base, died. The news spread throughout the island in less than half a day. But the atmosphere in the town did not become lively because of this, and people's faces were filled with a duller look of worry than before. It seems that Marine's image has been deeply rooted in people's hearts and has become a symbol of oppression. People's hope will not be rekindled just because of the fall of Balin. They will only worry about whether the next base director of the Marine branch will be more cruel and cruel. Quote. Advertisement. Joel stood on the third floor of a tavern, looking down at the pedestrians hurriedly walking on the street with a calm expression. The so-called people, or all living things, cannot be changed easily. They will only live in cycles according to their own habits. Ah Jin sat on the ground, drinking bottle after bottle of wine thoughtfully. Is this also your habit? Yes, I know that I will never be a leader, so I want to serve you. I want to go further on this vast sea. Please trust me. Ah Jin put down the bottle of wine and lowered his head solemnly. It's a tough road. I will prove myself. Haha, interesting. Joel laughed, then come with me. On the deck of the pirate ship, Caribou was covered in bandages. He was supported by Crib and stood aside. He looked at Joel, who was lying on the deck chair, and said cautiously. Lord Joel, this is my brother Crib. He is my only relative. I wonder if I can take him to sail with me so that I can take care of him. Joel glanced lightly, and saw that Crib's figure was in sharp contrast to the thin Caribou. He looked quite strong. There was a chameleon with similar hairstyle lying on his head, with a shovel on his shoulder, and he was looking fierce. Look at yourself. Lord Joel, as long as my brother can get on the ship, I will do whatever it takes to do anything. Caribou said, and quickly put a hand on the back of Crib's neck, pressing down hard. Crib, you idiot, kneel down with me, please Lord Joel. You. Crib narrowed his eyes, and the fat on his face trembled. Hey, you can't be rude to Lord Joel, you idiot. Caribou, who vaguely noticed something, scolded him quickly, fearing that his slow-minded brother would do something extraordinary. You look just like the person in Grandma's diary. Crib suddenly grinned. He threw the shovel on the ground, took out a diary from his trouser pocket, and carefully pulled out a yellowed photo. Brother, look, does he look so similar? What are you saying? Caribou wanted to apologize hastily, but due to curiosity, he couldn't help but glance at the photo from the corner of his eye. What's the resemblance? This guy is just a teenager. At least Lord Joel. Quote. More than 100 years old. Exclamation mark. Caribou's eyes widened immediately. Could it be that the hero that the old woman always talks about is Lord Joel? The boy who defeated a pirate group by himself, the man who once caused countless turbulent waves in the world. Advertisement. The reason why he was attracted to various legends and stories and his belief in the priest was also influenced by the old woman's constant talk about the hero. The legends of the distant past appeared vividly in front of him at this moment, and Caribou suddenly felt a sense of absurdity in time and space. It can't be wrong. Crib suddenly knelt down and knocked a big hole in the deck with his head. The green chameleon on his head was so frightened that it limped into his clothes and only poked out a pair of small eyes. You must be Grandma's benefactor, then you will also be my boss in Crib from now on. Idiot, pay attention to your choice of words. Boss sounds more like the gangster leader of a gang. You want to call him Lord Joel. Caribou came to his senses and quickly corrected him. Is that so? Crib thought thoughtfully. Joel finally put down the newspaper in his hand at this moment. He had long forgotten many memories that existed in the past, but he did not hate the excitement. Is your name Crib? Yes, boss. From now on, you will be responsible for cleaning the ship. Got it, boss. Crib put the shovel on his shoulder again and bared his teeth. Very good. Caribou's face was filled with tears, and he felt a big stone falling to the ground in his heart. Akin. Joel looked towards the cabin. Mr. Joel. A man with white hair walked out of the cabin. Joel asked, can you sail? I have the experience of sailing a fleet independently. Ah Jin briefly recalled all the past events in East Blue, and then said calmly, but in Grand Line, my sailing experience is nothing at all. It doesn't matter. From now on, you will be the navigator of this ship. Joel continued, Carib, the rest is all up to you. Give it to me. Caribou's heart was pounding. Did Lord Joel mean that I was the second in command on this ship? Yes, Master Joel, he said with excitement. Chapter 23 Smoker. What? That guy Baron. Okay, I have received the information, and I will rush there immediately. On the deck of the standard warship, Smoker hung up the phone in his hand, lit a cigar thoughtfully, and started puffing away against the ship's railing. What happened, Smoker Commodore? Tashigi sat aside, wiping the famous sword Shigur in his hand. He seemed to think of something and suddenly stood up excitedly. Is it the news about Straw Hat Boy and the others? No, it has nothing to do with Straw Hat. Smoker blew out a long puff of smoke. After the Alabasta incident, the credit for defeating Crocodile was attributed to him, and he was promoted to Commodore. Although he was very dissatisfied with the world government's approach at first, he gradually came to understand one thing during the voyage. That is, it was not enough for him to implement his beliefs in naval headquarters with his current status. So he needs status. Therefore, Smoker has been catching pirates of all sizes in the waters near Alabasta and accumulating military exploits. Information about the G46 branch, which was only 3 days' flight away, also reached him. Something happened to the G46 branch, Smoker said. Tashigi asked. Is this the G46 branch that said, because you have a disagreement with the base commander Baron, you will not go to supply under any circumstances? No need to add such a strange prefix. Smoker's eyes twitched slightly, and then he said a few words expressionlessly. Baron is dead. Dead, dead, Tashigi asked in shock. That guy, like me, is a fellow student led by teacher Zephyr. He likes to secretly compete with me, but I have always hated his style, but I didn't expect that he would die so suddenly. Smoker had a cold face, as if he was thinking about something. Tashigi continued to ask, was the branch attacked? Smoker said, no, he was killed in public while encircling pirates, but the specific circumstances are unknown. Then let's do it now. Please inform me, change the route immediately and go to the G46 branch. Comma. The sun is shining brightly and the sky is clear. The Gulu sailed slowly against the wind and waves. After purchasing a new record pointer and charging up the island's magnetism, the ship set sail again one day ago. Before leaving the island, the two Caribou brothers returned to the village and said a formal farewell to their grandmother before returning to the ship. With the help of his younger brother Karib was finally able to spare an hour from his 20 hours of work every day for a midday break and a nap at dusk. He would miss this stupid brother a little when he didn't see him, but seeing him dangling in front of his eyes, he felt that this guy was very annoying. Brother, brother. Karib ran over with a mop on his shoulders, grinned at Caribou who was sitting on the steps, clasped one hand tightly. Advertisement. Guess how many candies I have. If you guess correctly, I'll give you both. 5. Caribou, who had his eyelids raised, spoke in a nonchalant manner. Wow, you guessed it right. Karib showed a wise look and put the candy into Caribou's hand. I'll give you 2 first, and I'll give you the rest next time. After saying that, he happily ran to continue cleaning. Who cares about this kind of candy? Do you think I am a child? Caribou said contemptuously, trying to throw the candy in his hand into the sea. Ah Jin's eyelids twitched as he calmly watched this scene. This was not just candy, it contained the younger brother's flawless affection for his older brother. In this world of intrigues, how many people dream of it but cannot get it? He rushed over in 3 steps and reached out his hand to stop Caribou in the direction he was about to throw it. The expected scene of catching the candy did not appear, and Akin's head hit the main mast in front. Boom. The mast made a crisp sound. Forget it, it doesn't matter if you keep it. Caribou suddenly retracted his hand, put the candy in his arms, and then looked at Ajin in front of him in confusion. What are you doing? No, it's okay. Ajin turned his back to Caribou, covering the big bump on his head, and squeezed out a few tears from his eyes in pain. Why should I do such a thing? He said in his heart. Weird guy, Karib muttered and walked away. After a while, he came to Joel's side, hesitated for a moment, and couldn't help asking the doubts in his heart. Master Joel, how did you know I was there at that time? Joel took out a life card with red lines and said. This kind of thing is called a life card. It represents the owner's physical condition and location. Therefore, even if you go to the end of the world, I can still find you. The calm tone made Caribou feel creepy. He seemed to have thought of something. He swallowed hard and continued to ask. Then the slash wave you released in the town before, was it also armament hockey? Joel, who was sitting on the railing of the boat, felt the slight turbulence of the fishing rod in his hand. With a sudden lift, a fresh fishhook jumped out of the sea. Another empty hook. Advertisement. He was not annoyed, and inserted the bait into the hook again, and then said casually, oh, that's just one of my devil fruit abilities, blood evil. Joel raised his hand, and the palm covered with light red air suddenly appeared in front of Caribou. The latter's body suddenly became cold and he couldn't help but shudder. Evil energy, a kind of spiritual energy generated by the circulation of human blood, is somewhat similar to hockey. You can simply understand it as the death energy of a living person, but except for me, most people cannot use this energy. Joel retracted his palm and threw the fishing rod into the sea again. Instead of focusing on my affairs, maybe you should consider how to improve yourself. I know, I understand, Master Joel. Karib suddenly felt a little ashamed. He actually wanted to inquire about Joel, instead of reflecting on his shortcomings in the last battle and continuing to hone his abilities. This attitude really shouldn't happen. He walked away feeling a little disappointed, and after walking dozens of steps, he suddenly realized something and raised his head. It's not right. He, Caribou, is a powerful Logia fruit user. Although he cannot compare with Joel, he is far from being comparable to ordinary pirates. As long as he does not meet those guys who know how to hockey, why not walk sideways on this sea? There's nothing to improve. When he thought of this, Caribou suddenly became cheerful and walked towards the cabin humming a tune. 2 days passed quickly. After Karib came on board, the two brothers went from being harmonious at the beginning to becoming brothers, and the frequency of quarrels increased sharply. Ah Jin tried to dissuade him several times, but after finding that it had no effect, he let it go. Mr. Joel, something seems to have changed. He walked over to Joel, who had been sitting motionless for 3 hours. Here comes the big fish. A joyful smile appeared on the corner of Joel's mouth, and he lifted the fishing rod that seemed to be about to break in his hand. The black shadow under the slender fishing line suddenly grew larger, and the eyes that were shining like lanterns surfaced first, and then the terrifying mountain-like body lifted up like countless seawater and appeared in the air. The sky at this moment was blocked by the huge size of the sea beast, covering it with a shadow like night. The giant beast opened its bloody mouth enough to swallow the ship, and quickly bit down with two dense rows of sharp teeth. Joel didn't move at all. Ah Jin raised his head and glanced at the shadow, then jumped up and reached the sky above the sea beast. The iron crutch he held in his hand kept spinning, and in an instant, he fell heavily. The tiny figure bit the huge sea beast on its head like a mosquito. The latter looked up with a humanized look of disdain. But in just the next second, an astonishing force came from the attack location, spreading throughout its body in an instant. The sea beast's eyes suddenly changed from disdain to pain and fear. Driven by instinct, it gave up on the prey in front of it, swung its tail, and dived back into the sea as if to escape. The splashing water fell like a heavy rain, and the sea fog also rose in response. In the haze, black spots seemed to appear in the field of vision. It's a pity that you escaped. I can only give 0 points for this splash. Having said that, Joel did not show any regret at all, but instead his eyes fell on the sea in the distance. Chapter 24 Requisition. The marine flag on the standard warship is so bright. It represents the flag of justice. At this moment, it is like the positive and negative poles of a magnet meeting, and it is deeply attracted by the skull sail of Joel's ship. Lord Joel, Marine is approaching us. Agent fell back on the deck. It must have been the huge noise made by the sea beast just now that made Marine discover their traces. Joel said. I saw it. Ah Jin, you should know that man. That guy. Agent looked far away, and then said with a solemn expression, it's the White Hunter Smoker. He once guarded Logue Town and was a very feared figure. As he spoke, the warship was already approaching according to the wind, and a smoky figure on the deck jumped high, white fist. Countless smoke pushed forward a powerful punch like a rocket launcher. Mud fist. Upon seeing this, Caribou hurriedly stepped forward and faced him tit for tat with a fist wrapped in countless mud. The smoke and the swamp collided with each other. In the situation where no one could do anything about the other, the forces eliminated each other and turned into a strong wind, rolling up waves of waves. Smoker fell back on the deck of the warship and frowned. Tashigi, I remember that was the Kuzu pirates. Yes, that should be the pirate flag of the Kwangju pirates. Tashigi preparedly held the famous sword at his waist with his right hand. I remember the captain of the drunk pirates is a guy with a bounty of 31 million. Is there such a person on his ship? Smoker blew out a smoke ring and said, a Logia demon fruit power. You mean, Logia, Tashigi said in shock. As a sailor who has followed Smoker for many years, she has witnessed him using the power of smoke to kill countless pirates who dreamed of conquering the Grand Line in Logue Town, the gateway to East Blue. It is self-evident how powerful Logia's power is, but the holder of this power now appears in a small pirate group with a bounty of less than 50 million. This was enough to make her somewhat unable to control her emotions. A rare ability. Smoker slowly took out Jusho from behind, a weapon with a sea stone on the top. Just as he was about to wipe out the pirate group in front of him, whose members could be counted on one hand, he suddenly stopped. No, that guy is not the captain yet. Kingju, Kwangju, found it. Tashigi hurriedly rummaged through the bounty list handed over by the sergeant, pulled out a few and looked at the figures on the opposite pirate ship to compare. No, Smoker Commodore, these people are not on the bounty list of the Kuiji pirates. Fighting among pirate groups is very common in this sea, but the tall man surrounded did not look like someone who needed to occupy other people's ships in order to continue sailing. He should not have no name of his own. Thoughts flashed through Smoker's mind. At this moment, the figure jumped up, crossed the sea dozens of meters wide in one step, and landed on the warship easily. Such a long distance. He didn't borrow any power. How on earth did he do this? Advertisement. Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the soldiers still found it incredible. They nervously held up their muskets and aimed at the man who was already exuding an invisible intimidation just by standing in front of them, waiting for an order. I declare. Joel looked around and slowly showed a gentleman's smile. Now, this warship has been commandeered by me. Requisition. Smoker frowned. Are you kidding me? Smoker Commodore, give the order. Tashigi pulled out the famous sword at his waist and prepared to attack. Smoker did not respond, but took a few steps towards Joel. His right hand turned into smoke and shot out, instantly covering Joel like a giant net. Smoker Commodore takes action. This guy is no match at all. You dare to be so arrogant in front of Smoker Commodore, this is what you will get. The soldiers who had witnessed countless pirates being trapped by this move showed joy on their faces. As soon as they finished speaking, the situation changed. The invisible smoke that enveloped Joel seemed to be pulled hard, and Smoker's body suddenly leaned forward uncontrollably like it was being pulled by a rope. The looming blood-red pupils in the smoke were as intimidating as Shira from hell. In this terrifying aura, several bloody bats entangled with armament hockey bit into the smoke, screaming and crashing into the oncoming Smoker. Boom. Like a bullet flying backwards, Smoker's figure was smashed straight into the cabin, and flew out from the bulkhead of the rear cabin amidst a series of huge impact sounds. The whistling wind filled my ears, and the Smoker turned into smoke, entangled with the mast on the back deck, and finally stopped its backward flight without falling into the sea water. He was half crouched on the deck, his head buzzing from being hit, and he felt an indescribable pain. On the front deck, the bats formed by the blood evil did not disappear after colliding with Smoker. Instead, They suddenly split and turned into a dense swarm of bats, fluttering their wings and biting the soldiers in all directions. All the smoke remaining around Joel disappeared, and he stood calmly in the middle of the deck. I can repeat it again, I just want to commandeer this warship. The calm tone did not sound like the culprit of this disaster at all. There was a sound of thunder in the sky, which seemed to reflect the credibility of these words. Hiss. Tashigi slashed with a knife, splitting a sparrow-sized blood bat in half in front of her, but her messy hair already showed her inner panic at the moment. What is this ability? Just a blood bat can fight her for a moment in the left and right transverse processes, and even bite a few wounds on her body. There are countless blood bats on this warship, attacking soldiers who are far less powerful than her. They can't hold on. Tashigi looked at Joel, his heart trembled, and he rushed over with a knife. Don't make a move, Tashigi. Smoker walked out of the cabin and shouted to stop his men. Smoker Commodore. Tashigi was stunned for a moment. There is no need to risk the lives of this ship. Advertisement. Smoker took a deep breath and looked at Joel. I agree. Stop your ability. Whatever you want, I promise you. Tashigi gritted his teeth. But if something happens, I'll take the responsibility. Smoker said. Very good. Joel flicked his cloak, and the thousands of blood-evil bats around him dispersed into clouds of blood mist and disappeared into the air. He said leisurely, I'm not forcing you. It's certainly not forced. Smoker responded with twitching eyes. This was more of a coercion than force. But he is not stupid. Only when the strength of the two sides is completely unequal can the other party be qualified to threaten. Having lost their battle target, the soldiers either knelt down with weak legs or leaned against the railings, but they knew that they were temporarily rescued. And looking at the commander in front of him, who had to succumb to the pirates' power because of them, his eyes also showed a moved look. They had been following him from Logue Town and knew very well how much risk Smoker was taking by doing this. If this matter is further investigated by naval headquarters in the future, Smoker's career will become very bumpy. It may no longer be as simple as transfer, punishment, or even dismissal. The Gulu soon approached the warship. Crib rushed onto the warship deck with a shovel in the air, his pupils full of bright marine uniforms, and he shouted angrily, Marines deserve to die. I'm going to kill you all. The chameleon on his head also hissed and spat out the letter. Crib. Caribou stopped his brother from acting recklessly. Although he and Crib hate Marine equally, he also knows that as long as Joel doesn't speak, they must not take action. Quote. Smoker picked up Juju with a solemn expression, and Tashigi maintained a fighting posture nervously. They can compromise temporarily, but they will never let others dictate. Caribou, please continue moving forward. I will meet you at the midpoint of the Grand Line, Sabayati Island. Joel looked sideways at Caribou. Also, save your life and bring my property safely to Sabayati Island. Lord Joel. I will do it. After hearing Joel's words, Caribou woke up from his hatred, and tears suddenly filled his eyes. Master Joel, are you concerned about me? He has me in his heart. What about me, boss? Crib asked eagerly, holding the shovel high. Alive. I understand, boss. Crib roared and returned to the golem, beating the air with a shovel, as if venting his anger on Marine. The chameleon on his head suddenly took on the shape of a boxer, pinched its paws with a serious expression, and pumped its fist forward in a relaxed manner as if preparing for a match. The brief burst of friction ended quickly, and the Marine soldiers secretly breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, the accident happened again. Chapter 25 Domination of the Sea. Just like the turbulent undercurrent of the Grand Line, there is a calm surface. At first, no one paid much attention to the disaster. This is just a sudden dark cloud. A long and weak drizzle. An occasional flash of thunder. It wasn't until the rapids on the sea began to surge, and the waves came in one wave after another like a carnival, that everyone standing on the deck could clearly feel that the rainstorm was extremely violent. No, Smoker Commodore, it's the tsunami caused by the Gaia current. The navigator held down the brim of his hat that was about to be blown away by the strong wind. He clearly felt that the nearby ocean current was rapidly returning in the same direction, and it seemed that an astonishing current would erupt on an island in the Gaia Sea. But at this moment, he had no time to think about the natural phenomenon named sky current in academic circles. Instead, he focused all his attention on the huge tsunami that suddenly appeared in front of him and was related to the safety of the entire warship. Facing the rapid natural power, Smoker was stunned for a moment, and then immediately gave instructions in a rough tone. Helmsman, adjust the course immediately. Tashigi, take people to raise all the side sails. We must leave here as quickly as possible before the tsunami comes. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Joel. He looked at the rising tide in front of him and said, Smoker, have your soldiers fill the mainsail and sidesail, we're going to get through this tsunami. Through. Smoker looked at Joel in disbelief. Is this guy crazy? Even if this tsunami has not reached its highest point, it has already reached a height of nearly 40 or 50 meters. In just 10 minutes, the waves will surge hundreds of meters into the sky. What can I do to get through them? Tashigi held the famous sword Shigur in his hand, gritted his teeth and glared at the tall pirate in front of him. Do you want our entire fleet of Marines to be buried in this sea? If this is your purpose, then we would rather die in battle with honor than let you succeed. Joel did not respond, but calmly turned his head and ordered, "Karib, Akin, do as I say." "Yes, Lord Joel, sir." Akin on the deck of the Gulu turned the rudder of the pirate ship without any hesitation, while the two Caribou brothers also moved in an orderly manner to open the canvas on both sides of the mast. "He really wants to go through it." Smoker looked shocked as he watched the pirate ship, which was closely connected to the warship, turning around to face the tsunami. In an instant, the black clouds in the sky completely covered the sky. Advertisement. The long rain suddenly fell as densely as the size of soybeans, dissipating the warmth that remained on the body only 10 minutes ago when the sun was shining brightly. Under the violent erosion of the waves, the bumps on the deck became even more severe. The soldiers were staggered and could no longer stand. "If you insist on dying, then today may be the last time we see each other." Joel casually grabbed the umbrella that a soldier was about to hand to Smoker, and opened it with one hand to block the falling raindrops. Smoker raised his head and looked at the waves that were rising faster than he imagined, and clenched his fists tightly. Even though he is not a professional navigator, he is not ignorant as he comes from this tribe. The waves wash away one after another, eventually forming a terrifying tsunami at the highest point, swallowing everything. Even sea areas 10,000 nautical miles away will be affected by this force. No matter how many tons of warship it is, under this natural power, it is like an ant under human feet, without any room for resistance. Following the direction of the tsunami, there is no way to escape. But if you go against this wave and wait until the rushing waves rush forward, you may have a chance to escape. But can this really be done? Smoker quickly glanced at the navigator on the high platform of the deck. He originally wanted to ask the other person for his opinion, but when he saw the desperate look on the latter's face, he took a deep breath. "Tashigi, let's turn around and follow that pirate ship. Commodore, there is still hope for us to escape from this tsunami. As long as. Tashigi's voice dropped to a whisper. "Everyone listen to my instructions, fill up the sails, turn the ship around, and face the waves." Smoker shouted with determination. This was his last resort, he had no choice. What a lucky choice. Joel was quite satisfied with Smoker's attitude. As soon as he let go of his right hand, the black umbrella was quickly rolled up by the strong wind, scattered in the wind like a dandelion, and disappeared into the darkness of the sky. He looked at Tashigi and raised his hand. "Give me that sharp knife." "What are you going to do?" Tashigi took a step back and held Shiger in his hand tightly. "I'll pay you back when I'm done." Boom, boom. After several dazzling white lights flashed from the sky, deafening thunder also sounded one after another. Tashigi looked at the sky, her face turned pale with fright. The situation at this time did not allow her to think anymore. With a cruel heart, she threw the good sword Wajo seized from the Baroque Chinese society. Take it." Joel took Wajo and lightly clasped the blade with his fingertips. Buzz. Advertisement. As if in response to Joel, the blade made a crisp sound. Not too bad. Joel smiled slightly and held the handle of the knife with both hands. Seeing the tsunami gathering the mighty power of heaven and earth in front of him, the blood-red aura rose up from his body. In the blink of an eye, this evil aura spiraled alternately and clung to Wajo's blade, forming strange blood-colored lines. The mighty sea tide piled up higher and higher amidst the howling of the wind. One wave followed another, forming a majestic wave that could cover the sky and the earth. At a glance, it was hundreds of meters high. In an instant, this astonishing view of the Grand Line, which is enough to stir the entire sea, is like an abyss hanging upside down and rolling down. The young faces on the deck looked up at this scene in despair. Tashigi turned pale and held Shiger tightly in her hands. Although she could do nothing, she didn't know if this would be the last time in her life that she would pose like this. Water droplets fell down like lines on Smoker's cheeks. He was still holding 3 cigars with a paralyzed face, but the frequency of puffing out smoke seemed to be getting faster and faster. Joel jumped up against the tsunami and waved the Wajo in his hand. Blood evil. Dominate the sea. At the same time, that crazy tsunami completely poured down, drowning everything. However, the next moment, a blood-red light emerged from the deep dark tide. Immediately, within the ocean tide that enveloped everything like a lampshade, the bloody light like a wick turned into a huge straight pillar of light, carrying countless winds like curling blades, roaring out. The pressing tide instantly completely shattered a huge hole nearly 100 meters in diameter. The 2 tiny ships raised their sails and followed the wind. They soared out of the huge hole in the tide in an instant, and then continued to fall in a parabola. The ship fell to the sea more than 10 meters below, causing another huge wave. After a period of violent swaying, the ship finally regained its balance, and was finally able to sail gradually amid the gentle waves ahead. On the Gulu, Ajin and others wiped the sweat from their faces. Even though it was a false alarm, they never wanted to experience this exciting feeling of wandering between life and death again. On the deck of the warship, most of the marine soldiers collapsed from exhaustion. The rest also let out a long sigh of relief, and then stood there blankly. Tashigi's legs were bent weakly, and the Shiger in her hand was inserted straight into the deck, supporting the weight of her body like a crutch. "Are you saved?" She took off her glasses, which were blurred by the sea water, and felt a sense of survival after a disaster. Smoker sat cross-legged on the deck and looked at Joel with a hint of complexity in his eyes. He remembered that he had seen similar moves when he followed Mr. Zephyr on a mission to the sea in the elite battalion of naval headquarters. At that time, the burly giant pirate held a giant axe in his hand and swept away all obstacles in front of him with just one blow, raising a wave of nearly 100 meters. That scene is still unforgettable for him. Later, he asked teacher Zephyr and learned that among the giants, that kind of attack was called powerful country.